3, 2, 1, and welcome back to Chasin the Racin.
And welcome back to the podcast brought to you by OMG Racing, JCT, Truck and Trailer Hire, and of course, Lucky Day competitions. Better chances than winning the lottery. That's not their tagline for anyone listening, by the way. That's just something I'm putting out there because you're 100% more likely to win on Lucky Day. Tractors, all sorts. I mean, they've got absolutely everything. And I actually had to tell them off. So I've been over, I dropped off the Honda 450 that I picked up from Bike Sport Newcastle that I mentioned on the last one. And instantly, and I think everyone in this room, haven't even introduced the guest properly yet, but everyone in this room right now immediately just wants to go on a brand new bike and try and snap it in half. There's something instinctive there. And all Lucky Day wanted to do was just tear this thing up a field, and I just went, not a chance. That is brand new. So someone has got a chance of bringing it unmarked, unscathed. It's just been run in, and that's it. It's brand new 450 and probably been drawn by now, but please keep an eye on those websites. But we have Josh Corner here who's going to introduce the episode sponsor.
Yeah, so we've got the episode sponsor for this week is Quick Shifter Coffee, long-term Patreons of the podcast. They're going to be
like 3-4 years.
Yeah. Been sat in the studio for a long time now, haven't they? So, yeah, looking at doing another Chasin the Racin blend. They've got their cafe in Wells in Somerset is now open. They've got plans to do lots of live events throughout this year. They've got a few coming up, possibly with Alistair Fagan and James Hillier. So I think that'll be a pretty good event. They're as part of our team for this year as well. We're going to have a little sort of Chasin the Racin Patrons fan zone. Alongside our team set up there, and no doubt Quick Shifter Coffee will be present at that as well. So yeah, thanks again for your support.
Fantastic. I tell you what, for the audio listeners, we can always tell when me and Josh have got Grace in the room. It feels like we're teachers there. We're kind of looking at it going, are we saying everything right here? But let's get down to the nitty gritty. The main man of the moment, Lewis Rollo, British pathway champion, multiple champion of all sorts, and the King of Scotland himself, the owner of this fantastic Highland cow mug. How we doing, son?
Not bad, thanks. Yourself?
I tell you what, you were all chat 2 minutes ago. I tell you what, you've never met, and I think we say that to everyone, but honestly, nice lad. Come in, have a cup of coffee, chill out. Second you put the headphones on, yeah, the mic, it's like race day for you.
Good old business.
Old business. And I tell you what, for the people that don't know, the first and most important fact that I've just learned about Lewis Rollo is he knows every word to the flower of Scotland. That makes you, that's got to make you the most Scottish bloke that we've ever had on this show.
I know. Well, even when I was a wee lad, I actually was at band practice as well, learning to play the bagpipes, because that's what I said. If I ever get on a MotoGP podium, I can play the bagpipes in Flower of Scotland. But nah, like I just said to you, I actually never even knew the Scottish anthem. It was my Irish girlfriend who taught me it. So we went to the rugby at Murrayfield to watch Scotland v Ireland. Is Murrayfield there? Oh, hold on, which one's that then? Is that the Scottish? That's in Edinburgh, yeah.
That's in Edinburgh, thank you. Sorry, I'm learning.
So she was still staying in Ireland, but she flew over. It was actually the day we bought the house. So we got the keys for the house on the Friday and then went and watched the rugby on the Saturday.
Divorced by the Sunday.
Divorced by the Sunday. We went and we've got a photo where we got a scarf with one half Scotland, one half Ireland. So we sent that to her family group chat, and then we scored the first try, and then we got absolutely smoked after that. So the end of the game we sent another photo, and I had the Irish side on my side and she had the Scottish side. So now we went this year as well, and Scotland got bet for the 11th time in a row from Ireland. So in the house, at least Ireland's the better rugby players, and we try and keep Scotland better at motorbikes.
That's the way to do it. So, like, my other half, she's Irish and all, and I tell you what, my whole happiness solely depends on Six Nations. If Ireland gets beat, the house is miserable. Like I'm picking up the dog, I'm walking out, going, we're gonna have to let this calm down for at least till next season. It's not bad. It's very important. Like, I tell you what, here's a question for the both of you. Are you competitive in other sports?
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
That's why I don't play other sports, because I'm
like,
shit at all of them.
Yeah, but you know what's mad? Like watching other sports. Like it's do you get invested in other sports? You know, how,
Yeah.
like all my mates like all support Newcastle Football Club, and then the talking point when you're at work is all about the football, and it's they're so passionate about it. It's like they play for the team.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that with other sports?
Don't know how. Like, you answer first, and then
I don't know, like, I obviously enjoy rugby. There's a park down the bottom, Gifford Goblins, so I played with them, like, rugby when I was a kid. So I loved rugby, loved playing it, and then went to school, done all the sports as well, but like you say, just too competitive. Got kicked off the basketball team for rugby tackling someone. He got kicked off, like, football, for, like, just hacking folk and everything, so you do get a bit competitive, but watching it on
that's
TV, watching it on TV is a bit different. It's I don't know. I'm usually that busy with all my other stuff. I'm not that interested. But when we went and watched Ireland, Scotland playing the rugby, it was more the competitive between me and Lynn. Like, she's cheering on Ireland, I'm cheering on Scotland. Ireland's getting tries, and then I'm like, every try just got worse and worse for me. So then you get more competitive that way. But I know I had to keep smiling, and she had a good day.
I'll tell you what, I'm still starstruck with the fact that you played basketball, because. Like, I tell you what, let's talk about the school days. You know,
you meant netball, really.
Either way, it's going. Yeah, Jesus, that's a different image altogether. That you playing netball, that's hellish. That, but like, we always on Chasin the Racin. You know, we always start from the beginning. So. Bikes, like, when did the bikes come in? I'm generally thinking rugby and basketball. Was it quite a late start for you in motorcycles?
No, I was.
No, I did not.
My dad missed me getting born. He was away buying a motorbike exhaust, so he missed that.
Big fan of your dad. Never met him. Big
my
fan.
mum, she drove to the hospital. She had me, and then she drove me home. So she was by herself. But as soon as I was born, it was just motorbikes. My dad raced enduros, but he had kind of stopped that by the time we were born. And then he's just big into his road bikes. And then my big brother, he done a bit of motocross. My cousins, my uncles, my granddad raced speedway. Like, the full family is just motorbike crazy. And then even my dad's uncle, he raced cars as well, so it's just petrol through and through. So as soon as I was born, motorbikes, my mum says I used to, like, my dad was in a bike club, and they would turn up outside the house, because we're just like outside a wee village, and they'd go away up over the hills. And I'd sit in the kitchen, like, screaming, like, just shaking, wanting out to sit on all the bikes. And then when I was 3-year-old, started riding motorbikes. 5-year-old, started racing schoolboy motocross down at, like, lock houses. And then when I was 6-year-old, started on the mini motos. That's when I went to tarmac.
My God. So I'll tell you what, your granddad, right, you know, speedway, like, how... Was that a bit of fun for him, or was it quite...
No, well,
did he get to, like, a level?
He died before I was born, so I never met him, but there was all the different clubs. So there was, like, Berwick Club, there was Edinburgh and Glasgow, I'm sure.
Aye.
So I'm sure he rode for Edinburgh for a while in Glasgow, but I think he was pretty decent, and went down to England and done stuff down there as well, I'm sure.
Because you can make it, like...
It's a good sport, speedway. I always think it's pretty accessible.
It's not, though.
It's not because of the where you race and stuff, but it is in a way as well, because there is a bit of money in it, because it's like an arena sport, and it's entertainment. Like, I've been to watch it at, like, Redcar and stuff on, like, a Friday night for the crack. It's great. It's better than going to a football match.
I was actually funny, like, for the listeners, by the way, we're up in Bonnie, Scotland here, Haddon. It's actually, you're probably one of our most local guests, like, we're based in the northeast, but I'd say, like, you're not too far from East Fortune, and we were having a bit of crack before, and it's like, that was my first ever track day. Was
it really?
Eddie's Fortune, and I thought,
can you call it a track?
How dare you get out this studio? It's the track, man.
But it is an airfield, isn't it?
It is an airfield, and they're used to. I don't know did you do it when there was still old roads? So it was all the
top,
bumpy bit.
the concrete meets,
So it was an old airstrip, and they weren't actually allowed to tarmac over it. So the full track was tarred except from this bit of the airstrip. But now they have tarred over it. But you used to come down the straight and but the paddock was there as well. So the wind would come down like the runway, but it's blocked off from all the vans and lorries in the paddock, and then you would come out just past the paddock to take a right, and then the wind would hit you. And I'm sure most people have ended up in that field at the end of the back straight. But it's a brilliant wee circuit. That's same as well where I sat my licence for doing big bikes, and then done my first race as well. And Neil Mackenzie was the same. That was where because I think he was the first person to ever sit his test and then win his first race. And I managed to do the same. Obviously I was just in like the 125 class, but done my test and then won my first race and then crashed in the rest of the thing.
And did you go straight from, because there was quite a big mini moto scene when you would have been doing mini bikes, wasn't it, up here? And then did you go from mini moto straight into super teen? Or did you do a bit of like metric stuff in the middle?
Nah, so obviously there's this is Friday, but I don't know when this will come out, but we've got the Scottish Bike Show this weekend coming. So we were actually working this out the other day. It was 20 years ago. So I was 5 turning 6, and now I'm 25 turning 26 this year. So 20 years ago, turned up to the Scottish Bike Show every year. I had went, there was a mini moto demonstration out in like outside, and as soon as I got in the gate as a kid, I would just run up and I'd want to stand all day watching this. And every year I'd try and get on, and Alan McIntosh, who ended up a huge part of my career, he actually was like, no, you're no riding, you're too young, the insurance doesn't cover you. And then one year we went up, and it was actually his dad was like, okay, I'll let you out because I can remember you from every year coming and wanting it on the bike. So had a run out, went to competition, won a free mini moto, and that started that. But done the mini motos in Scotland, it was huge. Like you say, when I first started, there was probably 150, 200 people at each round. So it was huge. Like we would go.
Yes.
Is that just Scotland alone?
People would travel up.
There was 2 big championships then, wasn't there? There used to be like, there was a British championship, there was a Southern championship, and a Northeast championship. And then the Scottish Championship as well. And then like the Northeast lads would like go to the Scottish Championship and vice versa. So it was massive. I remember going, even before I was even racing, my dad was still racing mini motos, and my uncles. And
your dad went on a mini moto?
Yeah. That's how I started. Same thing.
We had a guy, Big Jim, in the Scottish. I'm sure he was about 20 stone, and he was Scottish heavyweight champion, and he could ride.
Mini motos were for adults first. Like they weren't. It wasn't a kids thing. It was like pocket bike racing was come from Italy, didn't it? And it was like the story that I got from my dad and uncle was, they were in Westgate Road in Newcastle. There's the pie shop at the bottom of the road, and in that window you could put adverts in the thing, and they still do now. It's not as big as it was.
It's crack now.
Yeah, it's adverts for barber shops and stuff now. But basically, you just put like bike adverts, and I remember going as a kid and it being there, and they'd seen this thing for Mini Grand Prix, and they were like, "Oh, well, we'll go over and have a look," because it was a Saturday ritual to go to this street, and they had this advert for. It was, you remember Ian and Andy Feely? Do you remember them?
The Feely from Corbridge.
Yeah.
So
they were running this like hire bikes. So they used to call them the pigs, 910 Pellinis, and then you could go to Gateshead indoor track in Gateshead basically. So they went there and they just fucking rode around all day, loved it, and then just went every week. And then like it became a bit of a scene where people started buying their own bikes, and then like JRCs came about and stuff like that, and like. I know Alan ran lots of rounds and stuff, and then they got to know Alan, same thing. And then basically all the lads were doing it, and then they started having kids. So they would have been like our ages now, doing mini bikes. It was cheap and affordable then. You could buy a bike for 500 quid. Like the $4,000 now.
Well, even that's what Alan's biggest thing. He gave away 10 bikes a year to kids to get them into the sport. So he had the wee 910 Pellinis. You would turn up, and I think when I went, there was about 50 kids from the Scottish Bike Show who had seen it, like advertised, went along to enter it, and then he gave away 10 bikes at the end of the day. So that's how I got my first bike. He actually gave us it to use for a year, and then you handed it back, and mine's got handed back in the thing, all scuffed and wrecked like them all. But Alan was a huge part to get the kids in, because like you say, it's a huge commitment for a parent to go out and buy a bike and take them racing every weekend, because we were up to Kirkcaldy and Aberdeen, through to Glasgow, then we'd go down to Rowra. Obviously,
Rowra.
In the wet. After a few years, we then started travelling down to like Fab and things like that, like you say, going down to the British, and then even over to Spain, to Benidorm, doing mini bike trips. And even Alan had took kids out to Italy as well to race in the Italian Championship.
Yeah.
So who is this Alan then? What's his background, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, think of any famous Scottish motorcycle racer in the last 20 years. Who's probably had something to do with Alan, to be fair.
I know, but what is Alan's background? Because people aren't doing that at all now, are they?
He's retired
now. He done it for 33 years, and that's what everyone was like, oh, Alan, why are you stopping? Why are you giving it up? He's like, well, tell me anyone else who's done 33 years in the one job and then kept it going. So he's like, he had a business, he's done well, and he's retired, and now he's like a golf caddy. And
is he?
he loves life. He goes out caddies through the summer, and just enjoys himself. But you can imagine 33 years of parents telling you that their son's the next best thing, and that person's cheating, and all the other stories. But Alan, he ran the mini motos, but then he also ran an academy at Knockhill. So he had like an Aprilia 125, a Honda GP 125, a 600, and then Craig Jones would come up and instruct on it, and Neil Mackenzie. So like kids would turn up with their Aprilia 125, and Craig Jones and Neil Mackenzie would like go out and coach you. So like he had good guys, good connections. The mini bike scene was huge. It died off a wee bit, but then it came back.
Yeah.
Is it back now, do you think, or is it like,
even for adults it's back as well, isn't it? It's busy, yeah.
Like the pit bike scene had a right good spike, like COVID time, you know what I mean? Even before that, it was getting bigger and bigger, and COVID just sent it over the edge, but it seems to have quietened off a fair bit. But like mini motos, I would class are totally different to pit bikes. Is that, do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there was a period where it was seen to be like the done thing to get off mini motors like really quickly and get onto gearbox bikes and suspension and stuff.
And everything.
But I think looking back, Alan was always an advocate for that, wasn't he? To be like, you should stay on this longer. You learn a lot.
Alan was the only championship that stayed away. He did do pit bikes for a wee bit, but that's just because he had a huge connection with Pellini, and Pellini done some pit bikes.
Right. I remember them little automatic things that they did, didn't so they? That was the dad's race.
That was the dad's race. But Alan looked at it as, you're trying to get a big gearbox bike round a go-kart track, and that's fine for an adult who's chucking it about, but for a wee kid to try and chuck about a 50 or a 70cc metric kit or a heavy pit bike round the track, like, it's no teaching you racecraft, or everything's happening a bit quicker, whereas the mini motos, it was just carnage. Like, I mean, when I first started, there was all boys like Rory Davidson and Ewan Gray and that, Dean Brown, Kev Coughlin would come along, like all boys, and they're riding down the straight, like grabbing each other's seat unit, pulling themselves past and hitting knees off each other, like just wiping each other out. And that was the close racing and taught you racecraft. So Alan did stick with the mini motos, and same, I did get a metric kit. I got a 50 metric kit and a 70, and we would go down and do the odd fab meeting or take it over to Spain. But because Alan was helping us so much, we did just concentrate in Scotland on the mini bikes.
So why the draw to Spain? Was that track time? Because it, like, God, Ben, I feel like we could have a rant solely on Spain at the minute, but it's like, but why Spain at that age then?
I think like Kurt Blacklock, he'd obviously take over the big bikes over to Spain to do the Cartagena test, and then he took mini motos over in metric kits, and it just became a big thing with everybody kind of going over there, and it ended up that it was where all the championships mixed together. So like, that's where I first met Zach Corduroy, Ross Simpson, Bradley Perry, Milo Ward, like everybody was over there, and it was like we'd be in a big hotel in Benidorm, and they'd be running about, guess who's back, GRC, guess who's crap, Bellini, like kids fighting, just carnage.
It was carnage. What hotel would you have been in when you, because you were a couple of years
was
after
it the
me?
Grand Bally or something?
Well, there's a reason you were in that hotel. It's because we got you banned from the fucking original hotel. We got banned for life from the Hotel Molina for just being little bastards, basically. For when like it was the last years I would have went there was like Scott Reddin was just doing metro kits, and Danny and that had just kind of gone off. But Fraser Rogers, you were the biggest culprit if you're listening. He was the biggest cause, but he's not wrong to say that trip was carnage. We had a food fight in a Burger King once, orchestrated by Kirk Blacklock, actually, with about 40 infants, because everyone was only like 10 years old. It was honest. It's some of the best like memories that you'll sure you think the same. Like
that's what was good. Like you went over there. Obviously, if weather was on our side. One year it did actually rain, and we were the only ones that had
riding around.
I was the only person riding around the track because my dad was taking wets, and when we were like loading up the truck with the mini bikes and that, everyone's like, "Why are you taking wets to Spain?" And my dad's like, "Well, I'm not going all that way and then not having wet
riding."
Tires.
Yeah.
So there's me riding round, and everyone else is standing. It's like, what's he doing? But I don't know if that's why I'm quick in the wet now. But my dad would just send me out. Well, it wasn't even my dad. I just wanted to be riding the bike all the time, and no matter what conditions.
So what age was that then?
I think my first trip over there was maybe 8 or 9 year old till maybe 10 or 11 year old. I think I went 3 or 4 years.
So what I like asking is like, the mindset, what the hell, I cannot remember what I was thinking yesterday, never mind, an 8-year-old on a motor. Well, I wasn't on a bike at 8, so I find it interesting at your ages when you were racing at so young, what was your drive? Was it at that point it was just riding a bike, and when did it change that you thought, hold on, I want to beat all these lot? Or was it always the same and you thought, see what I mean? Is there it's like, remember when you were like proper little, you used to pull your pants all the way to your ankles to have a wee? And then one day that just stopped.
I still do that.
No, think about, like, I tell you what, it's like, you just think at one point you just go, you don't have to do this, just like a light bulb moment. That was only the other day for me as well, to be fair. So
I always remember, like, I think a lot of kids probably thought this, but I always remember my dad, like, in my early teens, saying to someone like, "Oh, it was only ever just a hobby," and then it just like grew into something else. And I just remember thinking like, it was never a hobby for me. No. It was like always serious. Like even though you loved it and you just wanted to ride, like it was actually always serious. And up until, I'm sure you would have been the same, because same route really. Up until 10 years old, it was your life. Like, didn't know any other. Like, I personally didn't play any other sports or do anything like that. So
no, well, I was competitive school, so like I had that hunger to win, be first at everything. Like that's what I was saying to Lee Johnston out in Spain. Like at the school, my mum and dad got pulled in because they were like, "You need to calm Lewis down. He wants to be like first in the bus queue, first to the dinner lunch hall, like first at sports day, like doing everything." And so you had that hunger to win. And then you got given that opportunity. But obviously as like a tiny 7-year-old kid, you look at a mini moto as normal size. Like you're looking at a big bike, that's for an adult, that wee bike's for you. So it was like everything's so serious. You're turning up to the rounds, like I can still remember turning up to mini motos and spewing in the toilet, like nerves just
really?
Like I was a mess. And then obviously as an adult you go out worrying, like when you're learning to ride a bike, I need to get my knee down. We were the same as kids, like need to get my knee down. And then you get your knee down, you then start getting close to the front of races, winning races, and then it just turns serious. You then people would fall out with you because you're winning, like parents would be falling out arguing, like it was a serious thing. Even though you look at the mini bikes and think, oh, they're just wee toys, when you were there at like the Scottish or British, the parents were still spending money, so it was still competitive. And I think everyone there, we were all the same. You all wanted to go out and win, and there was obviously still some people who done it as fun, but like you say, my dad turned up and there was the Taskers, and I think they had about 9 mini motos. There was the son and the daughter racing.
Andrew and
Sammy,
thank you, they are.
So they were there, and my dad's like, they've got a van, it's all like stickered up with photos of them riding mini bikes. They've got all these mini bikes, like they're taking this a bit serious. And then like a year or two later, I think my dad had about 12 mini motos. He had me riding, my big brother, my wee sister, and my wee cousin. So he would take all us, and then like our kitchen turned into a workshop. He's got the kitchen table where he'd be like doing paperwork, and then I'd pull the mini motos in and he'd have them on top of the table working on them, getting them ready for the weekends. So that kept us mega busy, but it was good because my sister, she was racing, my wee cousin, my big brother, like it got us all out, and it was like a family weekend away racing.
And it was at that point, I would say, like, I don't want to say affordable because it's all expensive, but it was like a race entry was like 50 quid for a weekend.
Ours wasn't even that. So we were, that's what my dad said to Alan for like because I raced mini motors right up till I was like 18, 19.
Right.
So I just kept doing it for training, like even when I went to big bikes and to help Alan and to coach the kids. And even still now, I'll try and get along when I can and go out with the kids and help them. But you look at it and you think it was kind of like an affordable thing. It wasn't crazy money, and you got along. And that's what my dad said to Alan. For all the years we'd done it, I'm sure it was like £22.50 to sign on, and you would turn up, £22.50, you'd ride from 12 o'clock in the afternoon till 8 o'clock at night over in Kirkcaldy. You'd go to McDonald's at dinner time and get a McDonald's, and my dad would be like, you can't get a cheaper day out. To go to the pictures with your family would cost more than that.
It's 20 quid each to go to the cinema.
It's more than that.
Yeah.
So that's what my dad looked at. It was great value for money, but now probably hundreds of thousands of pounds down the drain racing. He's like, oh, well, that wasn't it.
It was sad when the Kirkcaldy thing stopped, wasn't it? I remember we came up, didn't we, for that the last indoor thing that he did.
The endurance race, was it? Or
it was just the last day they would do. It used to be on a Sunday, didn't it? And then it stopped. Was the Carton place shutting down or something?
It shut down. I
remember because we were out on the Friday night with me. Basically, it was me dad, my uncle, and his mate, like the four of them who started mini bike racing, like when I was a kid. And we're out on this Friday night for a few pints, and they were like, "Oh, McIntosh is doing his last day on Sunday. Like it's a hire bike thing. It's shut. Like, shall we go?" And we're like all tanked up, like, "Shall we go?" Yeah. And then my uncle turned up the next morning, like 7 o'clock. He's like, "Right, get in the car." And we came up for it. We got a photo of us somewhere doing it. This was only a couple of years ago, wasn't it? A bit bad. It was funny, but it was sad because there's so many like memories of just going there on a Sunday and that.
Definitely, like that's where I first went to win that mini moto. That was where the competition was held. So there was Kart Start Kirkcaldy and then Kart Start Aberdeen. That was a guy, Craig, who owned both of them. So we were just every Sunday travelling to either one of them just to get out on the mini bike.
It's mad, yeah.
I must ask, obviously, while you were your mother was doing all the hard graft of giving birth to you, and your dad was off getting an exhaust pipe, which is just absolutely mega. But like, what does your dad do for a living to actually fund the racing side of things?
So my dad had a builder's business. He's done that all his days. So
manual job, hard working job, and as well as building bikes on the counter. You know.
So he was joiner builder. He worked for my dad's uncle. He owned Rollo Builders, which was quite a huge business. I think they had about 160 guys at one point.
Holy shit.
And that's where my granddad and everything worked, and then my dad worked there for them, and then that kind of just reduced in size over the years, and then it got handed to my dad's cousin, and then my dad started up like his own thing. So he had his own business, and then over the years, and then my brother, he worked for my dad, but they fell out. we were all
Classic family.
racing with each other, working with each other, living with each other. So my brother went away, done his own thing, but that was probably quite a good thing, because my dad, he ended up unwell for a wee bit. So I was working for him at that point. So I ended up finishing the jobs, and then I went and worked for my brother. And then my dad, he then came and worked for my brother as well. So now we've got Rollo Developments.
Right.
So it's my brother who owns it, and then my dad looks after everyone running about, and then
That's class.
I'm a site foreman. So
Hold on, you have a responsible job, and you're a British Superbike rider,
I need to as well to make the money to go racing. So
okay, imagine ringing up, Lewis. Can I have Friday off? Can you? I've got Friday off. No, you're not working, lad. Jesus wept.
It's same again. Obviously, me and my dad, we worked together so you could get the time off for the racing.
Yeah.
And that was my dad's biggest worry about actually shutting the business down, like his business, because he's like, oh, if we can't get the time off, or we can't make the money, because we were literally working between rounds, me and him. Because at one point he had about 15 guys working for him, then all the subbies. So he would go in and build houses, build extensions, do like house renovations and everything. So he was always busy enough, doing big enough jobs. And then when we had to go racing, he'd leave my brother in charge, and that's where my brother got annoyed, because he's left in charge running everything, and then guys no listening to him, because he was just a young lad as well, trying to tell these older tradesmen what to do. So then that's when him and my dad fell out, but they kissed, made up, and then
and now your dad works for him.
I know my dad works for him now. My brother's his boss, but it's good. It's my brother. He can support me. The business is growing. I'm happy because I've been a part of that. I love my work. I enjoy what I do. I'm like you. At the end of the day, you work, you make your money so you can have your toys and go and play and go racing. So I enjoy my work. We're really busy up in Edinburgh, going into all like 200-year-old houses. They are like got kitchens that are 60, 80 years old, and you're ripping them out, and the clients are spending a few $100,000 on the houses and turning them into like over £1 million houses in the middle of Edinburgh. So it is.
Hey, it's a good job. Your brother will be in charge of the books, because he'd be like, 420 quid for a set of tyres. Well, I'll change that light bulb. That's 2 sets of tyres. There you go.
The heart needs fully rewiring.
Oh yeah. Oh,
I only wanted a cooker fitting.
That's a brand new Aprilia for this year. There you go, champion. There you go, Doris. Get that signed. Now I'm only joking, but he's like, did you leave school early? Because obviously you're working. Like what?
I didn't really enjoy school.
Because you're rugby tackling people in basketball. That's why. So
no one enjoys school.
No one enjoys basketball. I'd love to have been on the side of that like that.
I'm dyslexic, so like struggled to read, struggled to write, had an alpha smart at school, had like colourful bits of paper, like the teachers tried everything they could to try and get me to like stick in, but I struggled. But the years actually, same again, because of being competitive, like first, second and third year at high school, I wasn't interested, and then it was like, right, you've got your exams, and I was like, well, I didn't want to fail, I want to pass, and you want to do the best you can. So I stuck in at school, passed all my exams, and the teachers are like, Lewis, you've done brilliant, like we want you to stay on and like go for your hires and everything. And I was like, nah, I'm leaving definitely. And they're like, but you need qualifications, everything for getting a job. I was like, well, I'm going to be a bike racer. So the usual, everyone's thoughts at 15, 16-year-old. Left school. I had been working with my dad since the day I started mini motos. My dad had me out, well, I was out on building sites before that, but my dad had me out sweeping up, tidying up, like running back and forward to vans, getting tools, materials for guys. So he always kept me busy when I was young. So then when I left school, I was like, nah, I'm not working for my dad. So I went to college doing engineering.
Right.
And that was 3 days a week. And I did enjoy that because I had an interest in it. But then you're away racing. And then I was trying to work for my dad in between that as well, and my dad's like, Lewis, we're not making enough money with you being away at college. So he's like, you need to leave college, concentrate on the racing, and then you can always go back to college. Because I was like the youngest, well, I was 16 at college, whereas everyone else is maybe 18 plus, maybe 20 plus. So left there and then just worked with my dad full time to keep busy to go racing.
So, like, let's backtrack a little bit before 16 then. So, mini moto. So, at what point what was the decision to go, let's get off mini bikes? What was that definitive date? Or was that always the plan? If you know what I mean? Yeah.
I got the free mini moto. I won the novice championship.
Bent the bike in half, handed it back. Yep.
won the novice championship. Then won
best championship to win of your entire career in it.
Won the junior A's, won the junior B's, won the junior C's, won the featherweights, the lightweights, the middleweights. The open class was the first one to win like 3 championships in 1 year, and I done it on maximum points. So like each round you had 3 races per round, and then it was the highest points over the 3 races won the event. So won every single event that year in all 3 classes, and then I think I won the 3 classes like 3 years in a row, and then I think I won about 24 Scottish mini bike championships or something like that.
That's got to be a record, that.
So I think so. And then,
well, we're going to start the rumour now. Like, I hope some youngins listening to Chase the Race right now going, I'm going to smash that one day. You know what I mean?
So
Scotland's
done
most
that.
Successful mini motor rider.
Yeah. So you done that. So like obviously you were always looking at the next route. You had people, Callum Bay, Ryan Watson, Rory Skinner, they all went down south.
Are you more Scottish than Rory Skinner?
Nah, he's higher up. He's
No. I mean Scottish in general.
Is that the measure? How far from the border you are?
Yeah.
If you're John O'Groats, you are Scottish as it
That's
gets.
how far you travel. Well, I get to Newcastle and I'm like, I'm just about home and I've still got 2 hours to go.
I tell you what, Grace, actually, we were travelling up, obviously, like where Newcastle based, and just like Grace immediately just went, I feel so sorry for like Lewis, because like you get home and then you've got 2 more hours to get up here.
Well, Callum Bay and Sam Monroe.
Yeah.
Like they've got another 3.5 hours above me now. So like they would get to here and they've still got.
I just would move.
I know.
Like, it would be cheaper to move than pay the.
Well, that was like Neil McKenzie. That's why he moved down south, because he was like, I'm having 2 kids. Like surely, I think he had Taylor, and then after Taylor he moved down south, and then they still flew up to Scotland or drove up to Scotland to have Taryn, so he was still Scottish.
Thank God, I was going to say that because we had Taylor. Was it Taylor Grace? Recently had Taylor goes, oh no, that's a rumour. Like, bollocks, your dad fully planned on having a Scottish family. 110%. He went, right, you're about to go in the car. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, well, even for us, like, it's a lot of travelling every weekend, and that's what's a huge commitment as well, I think, because that's what, even when I've been like sitting down with teams, that's what they say, like, it's nice to, it's not just the fact you're travelling just a couple of hours to go racing, it's like, because it's easy for you, you're travelling, so you've got that hunger to do it. It's like Australians or whoever coming over here to race, like they are as fully committed as you're getting, so it is, the travelling's a huge thing, especially down to Thruxton and Brands.
I tell you what, in some way I'm going to be very, very unpopular with this answer, very unpopular. In some ways it's almost harder than the Irish. Now, no, hold on, hear me out. Now, I said almost. I'm not saying that as a stated fact, so I'm going to ruffle some feathers. There's a load of people in Ireland going, now.
There's a load of keyboards just went.
Type it away. No. In some ways, because like a lot of that, they have to logistically sort it out. And obviously, there's a lot of financial side of like, if they don't have a friend who can't store the wagon for them without paying fees, but then they get a flight over and then obviously picked up and gone. So if they centralise themselves, it's probably like an hour or 2. But obviously they've got the flight side of it. But for you, God love you, and especially Sam Monroe and all them lads, it's like you can't exactly get on a flight. You have to take the wagon up and down all the time. So it's about not worse. I'm trying to think. It's around about the same. I think I'm trying to dodge a bullet there, but it's like that That's a long, long way. A lot of diesel.
Callum Bay, when he done the 125s, he rode for Mark Hodson. Well, KRP first and then Mark Hodson. But he actually used to get the train down or fly downs because his dad worked on oil rigs.
Right.
So he would actually like jump on a plane. I think his mum would like go to the airport with him because he was too young to fly or whatever, get him checked in. He would then fly down south or get the train down south, and then Mark Hodson would pick him up, take him to the race meeting, and then send him home. So there is people who do that, but like you say with Ireland, when me and Lynn were looking for a house, that's what I had thought, like, I didn't mind moving over there to her bit, and then I could fly into like whatever airport was closest, and then my mum and dad heading down in their motorhome could like pick me up and take me to the closest round. So I was like, that'll make it easier for me. But
because we were talking about like, if obviously like whatever reason, you know, if different commitments changed, I would move to Ireland tomorrow. I really would, because obviously you can still sort it out. You know, there's a lot of flights coming in out of Belfast to like Newcastle, like all the time for that side of things. But then you can fly central, you can fly down south, you can.
I'll be honest, for us being in the north of England, it was easier for. Last year I did a lot of racing in Ireland. It was easier.
Aye, well, you just get
on
Ryan,
once you get on the ferry. It's just the ferries aggro if you've got to wait for the ferry or whatever.
But even then there were good times and like the logistical nightmare. But when you're on the east side of Scotland,
you're ideal.
Well, you're stuffed as far as getting to anywhere, really. You know,
sorry, that side, yes.
Oh, sorry, not the west side. It's a little bit easier, but it's like on the west side.
If you think like this year, logistically, the easiest race to go to, probably same for you, is Assen.
For us,
because we go from bloody Newcastle, and
party boat.
Yeah, you wake up, you're there, and there's like less than 2 hours of driving. So what would you do for Assen? Do you go all the way to wherever they send you from?
Have you ever done Assen?
I done Assen on a GP 125. That was my first ever BSB podium. It was
hold on.
Assen on that. So, and then I done the Ducati Tri Options over there. As well.
That's what I remember you doing.
Done it a couple of times over there. So.
Right, hold on. We're jumping. I'm getting excited now. So hold on. Let's talk back. So obviously the transition from GB's working all the time with your dad, and obviously leaving school and getting that sorted. And where are we now? So it's a case of you've gone from mini bikes
to Aprilia Super Teens.
Right.
So when they're a 12-year-old, won the Aprilia Super Teens at 12-year-old.
First season. So that was a year after Chrissy, because Chrissy was with Callum Bay, checking. So Callum Bay and me and him raced mini motos. Then he was a year older than me, so he always kind of was a class ahead. So he went to Super Teens. He finished second in the championship, and Chrissy won it. Did he? She doesn't know.
What year was that? What year?
That would have been was it 2010 or 2011?
The Super Teens. Chrissy won it in 2010.
Yeah. And then 2011, I think, Tom Oliver and David Allingham were battling away. And then 2012, went to the Super Teens, won it in 2012. And then that's where I met Ian and Myra Newton.
And that early on then?
So I met them when I was 12-year-old at Thundersport, and then they sponsored me a 450 for the following year. But I was too young because I was only 13, and you had to be, I think it was like 14 or 15 to ride one of them, but I got dispensation to ride that.
Because that was in the Super Twin class, they're 450 motocross bikes, weren't they? Is that right?
Yeah, but then that Aprilia was like a proper built.
I've got one in my garage. I managed to buy it back last year. So the guy, my dad had sold it to him, and he had it for like 10 years. And then there was a Not Kill revival thing last year, the 50th anniversary. So I was trying to get a hold of one of my old race bikes, and that's the only one I knew like where it was. So the guy got it running. I don't think it had been running for like 4 years, 5 years. He got it running, then I took it up to Not Kill and then melted all the wiring on him last year on it.
For God's sake.
I messaged him. I was like, I didn't really want to bring this back to your house. I was like, can I buy it off you? So I managed to get that. But I raced that when I was 13-year-old, but it was a proper bike. Like
gorgeous.
Ian and Trevor Scott, they spent a lot of time getting the SXV Supermoto.
Yeah, underseat exhaust pipe and everything. It was just...
I remember In 2009, there was like a prototype of it that Rob Elms, I can't remember his name.
I know what you mean.
You know the guy, I mean, he used to have the mad haircut. He had like a ponytail and plaits or whatever. I just remember him being a mad cockney. That's all I remember him. But he was riding like a prototype version of it, wasn't he? And then
I think Jake Dixon, was he maybe the first one to ride
the one that came, like a production one? Yeah, that's it.
And then the class just went huge because it was like there was GP125s at the time at BSB, but they were crazy, man. They were all the power valve ones, and you were, even back then, I think you were still looking at like between 40 grand and 60 grand a year to go and race them. So my dad was like, well, there's no, you've went from mini motos to a year in Aprilia Super Teens, but still wasn't bad because you'd buy a 125 Aprilia for like 3 grand or whatever, get a huge spares package with no matter what one you bought, go racing, we 2-stroke engines, cheap enough to build. And then I think Kyle Ride's dad, he had got the first Moto3 in the country.
That was 2000 and...
Was that 13 or 14? Oh, was that 12? That was 12 because we were 12. At Mallory Park with the Super Teens and Kyle turned up to ride it.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So...
Come through Padgett's, I think. It was
a wee Honda.
I remember them getting announced,
Even that, was that like 22 grand to buy the bike at the time?
I remember when they said about that, being at a BSB meeting, riding 125s, and everyone just being like, that'll never take off. That'll just never happen. Literally within 12 months, every fucker had one. And you thought, Jesus
that's what ruined it for us, because Alan McIntosh, he had gave me the GP125, but it was just a standard GP125, turned up at BSB to Knockhill, and I think like I qualified 6th and got a 7th or something at my first BSB up there, and then we went and done Cadwell, but like same again, Knockhill was fine because I had raced the GP125 there, whereas Cadwell I hadn't, so we did struggle a bit there, but we just thought to commit to BSB is huge, whereas you could go to Thundersport, race the 450, and you got 4 races a weekend in the 450 class, and then you could go in the Super Twin class and do 4 races in that. So you were 8 races a weekend instead of BSB, what was just 1 race, I think, at the time.
Just one race,
on the GP125.
2 practice, 2 qualifying, 1 race, that was it.
Whereas Thundersport, I think we got 6 practice sessions on a Friday, 2 warm-ups, 2 qualifyings, and then 8 races. And then the bike, I think the Aprilia to buy was around about maybe £12,000.
Aye, fully built.
Brand new. So Ian had sponsored us one, and then my dad had bought another one, so we had 2 bikes to race. So we're like, we've got 2 bikes and going racing for like the cost of a Moto3 or even going that. So we done that for 2 years. Broke my ribs, punctured my lung at Anglesey.
You know
got
what?
Airlifted.
I'm not being funny, mate. You know, one of the questions I was going to ask, you know, throughout your whole career, would you consider yourself a crasher? And I'm like, went straight away, punctured. Was this all in one sitting, or was this?
That was just one. I wasn't. So turned up to Brands Hatch, the usual Thundersport, right at the start of the year,
in February.
Like. I'm sure there was an oil leak down Paddock Hill. They had then went out, covered it in dust, washed it off. Then the water had frozen. It was like ice. Like, it was just horrible. So turned up on the 450, went out, won my first race, and then crashed in the next 3 races. And then my dad
sounds
was
familiar.
like...
Why does that sound familiar? There was a story like that before, yeah.
So that was the end of that weekend. Just 13-year-old, jumped on it and thought, oh, this is great. Then I think we finished 4th in the Thundersport Championship in the 450 class, and I think 4th or 5th as well in the Super Twin class, and then won the Knockhill Mini Twin Super Twin Championship up here on the 450. And then we built a 550 as well, so we used that. That was good when it was running. That was, at least it could compete with like the 650s, and then went 600s after that at 15-year-old. So,
and is this when you were sponsored? I remember you being sponsored by Kershaw's at one point.
Shirlaw's.
The white in the
bikes.
Oh,
they're good big bike shop, aren't they? Yeah.
So they were. Craig Shirlaw, he still sponsors me now. So me and him actually raced in the Super Twin Championship in Scotland with each other, and I don't know, Craig well, he was actually 40 yesterday. So what is he? He's 15 years older than me. So he was like a fully grown man. Well, he's in his 20s, and I'm, what was I, 13 or 14-year-old, and we were doing knock-hill reverse, came out the hairpin, round to Clark's, and then I had went like round the outside, up the inside, hit him, and then he crashed, and then I had won the championship. And he comes in and he's like wanting to go fighting with me. And Alan McIntosh, he was there, he's like stepping in like, you can't go fighting with him, he's a kid, like he's done nothing wrong. And then after it, Craig's dad Roy came up and was like, brilliant year, you've been riding mega, great to see. And he's like, oh, we've got a 600 and we'd like you to ride it next year. So Craig owned Shirlaw's at the time. Well, he was taking it off of his dad. And then his dad was wanting to sponsor like his rival from that year. So when I went the following, I don't know, January, February to pick up the 600, there's Craig like shaking my hand and sponsoring me a bike for the next year. I think he retired that year. That was him.
He's waiting till like you're 25. You're a big boy now. I bet he'll be looking at it going, I should have beat him up when he was 13, you know. Jesus, man.
No, so he sponsored me that, and then I was too young to do anything in British, but I got dispensation for the Scottish because we've got like the SACU.
Yes, I.
So they gave me dispensation, and then I started riding a 600 at 15 up here and won the Scottish 600 championship.
On Kawasaki's, when they were Kawasaki's through them lot, weren't they?
Well, that was when there was Andy Lawson.
Yep.
He was doing the roads for Shirlaw's. And they had a few boys. Chrissy Duncan.
Yep.
He's doing the roads now, but he was on a 650 at the time for Shirlaw's and that. So he had a good few bikes.
Shirlaw's has done a lot for this sport. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot, you know, even like a lot of the North East lads are like, you know, like getting their boots off them, gloves off them, and he's good friends with John McGuinness and stuff like that. Like, he's done a lot for the sport. Craig's
now sold the shop, so he had joined partnership with like a car dealership up at Aberdeen,
right?
And then they've took Shirlaw's on now, but Craig's got his new business now, Granite Motorcycles. So he's just he's built the business up, he's sold it, he's happy, and then he's started up his own.
Has he only recently just sold it then?
Yeah, just last year.
Right.
I think maybe start of last year. It's still under Shirlaw's, it's still his name and everything. And I think he's still connected with them, involved, but he's just doing his own. I think it's literally out his house, just driving up and down the country buying second-hand bikes and selling them. And I think just kids, family at home, like spending more time with all of them, it's a bit easier for him than running a big business. But now, like you say, he was huge. He was same again, the cost of buying a 600 was huge, and then going racing, tyre bills, everything. So he gave us that. Done the year in Scotland, the prize for winning the Scottish was free entry fees to BSB 600s. So
shit, that wouldn't have been cheap, mate. That's a hell of a prize.
So I think it was like between obviously Knockhill running the BSB and then BSB like, okay, we'll give the rider free entry fees to race on it.
That's a great idea. They need to do more stuff like that, don't they? I think anyway.
Well, there isn't many clubs around now. When Thundersport stopped, it was like Bemsy's still going, isn't it? But
No Limits is huge now.
That's the big.
It's the same. It's.
But then
it's not even really a club meeting, is it?
But then that's what, like, Thundersport, like, to be blunt, you know, without putting labels on it, but people who did Thundersport couldn't afford BSB, but then the times were like
I don't know,
but like the times were.
I don't know if I agree with that. Just to play devil's advocate.
No, go for it. Like, I like that's what the show's about.
Thundersport was a cracking club, and you got lots of track time. And Dave and Bernadette ran like a really good championship, and it was well organised and stuff. Best of all the clubs, but people would go from there and go to BSB and be last.
100%.
Like, and I used to hear people like all the time go, "Oh, I'm coming to BSB next year. I'm going to be at the front." I'm like, "No, you're not."
No, but
the level was still like. There is a difference, you know what I mean, like between British and the club meeting still.
I'm not saying they're on par, but I'm just saying that people who couldn't afford to be running at that level.
You still had the same names come up through.
100%.
So like from this, like the Super Teens was obviously one of the biggest thing for any young racer. Like all, even Cal Crutchlow, everything,
Yeah.
they all came through the super teens. But Casey Stoner, that's what Ian says. He's like, it's mad to think he was racing a Aprilia 125 and 7 years later he was MotoGP world champion.
Yeah.
Like, how
Fucking
quick
hell, when you say it like that.
Actually, yeah, that is mad, isn't it? When you say the 7 years like that. That's
I've
mad.
been doing
It's
this.
time, yeah. I love it. I love it.
So you look at it, but the super teens, same again, Zach Corduroy, Bradley Perry, David Allingham,
Doers. Absolute doers.
Yeah,
Tom Oliver,
Chrissy.
Tom Ward, Chrissy, like you met all them at mini motos, then we went like people done metricates, then the super teens, then you went like GP 125s or 450s. 450s was a huge thing as well, I think, for Thundersport people, because the club was ran so well. You're like, why go away to BSB when we can stay here and do that? So
You know, you're talking about that progression. Where's the next lot coming from then? Now, the reason I'm saying that is obviously there's different dynamics. Everyone's going to Spain. You know, people the families who have money, you know, they're going out and doing CV and everything, which is not old news. You know, that's always been the same. But as far as homegrown talent,
British
should I dare say,
British Talent Cup, isn't it, really?
it is. But then even that,
because the club meetings are good for like, they're fine for you to learn how to ride a gearbox bike, but the club meetings, there's no, like the super teens, when I done it, there was still like a full grid. There was like 30 odd bikes, whereas then the years after that it started dying down, and then at one point they had to mix the KTMs and the Kawasaki's.
it's a mix now.
Like,
Was there the Ninja Cup as well, the
that sort
Kawasaki
of joined
Ninja
into
Cup.
it, and
Was
it Bemsey, the Ninja Cup? Yeah.
but it isn't as, the path isn't as straight anymore.
No.
I think that's
And also, like, everyone is obsessed about Grand Prix. Do you think? Do you think if you're like a, I don't want to say the word child, that's wrong. But if you're a young rider these days, everybody is obsessed about going to Grand Prix. No, but I don't think anybody at that age comes into British Talent Cup on the perception of, I'm going to have a career in British
I'm
Championship.
going to be the next Superbike champion.
Yeah, it's all Grand Prix oriented.
Whereas when we used to go, like, I can mind going to Knockhill on the back of my dad's bike and then stand at the hairpin watching bikes saying, I want to do that one day. Then you'd turn up at Donington and for the MotoGP, but I wouldn't watch the big bikes and go, I want to be in MotoGP. I'd be watching like the Red Bull rookies because they were weird bikes and younger kids. You could like see, I could go and do that. So there was always like an aim, but like you say, now it is just I think because kids are stuck in front of the computer and on their phone, and they just see all MotoGP riders and living life out in Spain cycling. They're like, this looks great, whereas we're at work.
I think if you want to go down that road, you do have to go to Europe because there's just the opportunities there and stuff, but the cost is obviously phenomenal. I think British Talent Cup's great. It's still expensive. There's still people charging parents big money to ride in British Talent Cup and stuff, like mad money. But I think the next talent coming through, we don't know who it is because it's either out in Spain, not making it in Grand Prix somewhere because of finances, or I tell you the next big talent I think he's there already, Scott Ogden. He's like the one who's probably going to go the furthest next, if you know what I mean. He seems to be. I mean, he's top 5 in Grand Prix last week. Like, he's not that far into his Grand Prix journey, so like he's gone through that road, but. We never heard of Scott Ogden till he was in Grand Prix because he was like probably did mini bikes, went to Spain, and like we'd never heard of him. He might have done a bit of British Talent Cup.
I think he done a wee bit of British Talent Cup, but it's same again. And even still, when the ones that have managed to go to Spain and maybe do a bit, even when they were at British Talent Cup, they were still like. They weren't right at the sharp end. There was still, when the British Talent Cup first started, there was Skinner and Max Cook.
But even then, they're Red Bull rookie.
Yeah, they went rookies.
Their pedigree,
they went away to Spain and then came back to BSB. And
why was that? Was that an option for you at this point? Obviously, you know, yeah.
I know. Well, I went to Red Bull rookies when I was 12. Had won the Super Teens, just for the tryouts.
Right.
So I went over there, and I was 12-year-old. I was tiny. I think I ended up like 3rd quickest at the event, so like I was fast enough. But is it Peter Sutherland
Peter Clifford?
Peter Clifford who runs it. he actually I burst out in tears because I was gutted that I hadn't got in. And when I was leaving, he actually pulled me aside, and my dad, and he was like, I've watched what you've done this year in Super Teens and absolutely mega, but we just think you're too young to like travel round the world and do like all that. So he was like, but I want you to come back next year. And then I went back the year after, and same again, was one of the quickest there, but then had a crash and came off and broke my wrist. And that ruined it for me but as well at that time they had 3 Brits, so they had Taran, Kyle Ryde and Brad Ray.
They didn't need another Brit.
You've got 3 now BSB champions that were already in the Red Bull Rookies.
Three.
That photo, I'm thinking of that photo. It could have been
so
a very different story, couldn't
You've
it?
got all 3 of them, and they were at the Red Bull Rookies at the time when I was trying to get in, but it wasn't even just me. It was like Joe Francis and Zach Cordery. All of us were there trying to get in.
That's mental. You know, when you just think it.
So it was a chance, and same again. We all dreamt, brilliant. Obviously Tara, Brad and Kyle, they're all quite similar ages. The year they all pulled out was the year I never went, and then Skinner went and he got in. So like it's one of them. It's like people say, just being in the right place at the right time. Rory's a wee bit, what's Rory, 2 or 3 years younger than me. So Rory was, same again, knew each other through many motos, grew up with each other, but he was always just like the classes behind.
Yeah.
And it's same with Max Cook and Storm Stacey, all of them, just a wee bit younger. And it's same when I, further down the line, tried to go, say, Super Sport or go BSB, there was still like big names, and like Taran was still in Super. The year I done Stock 6, Taran had like won British Super Sport, and there was all still their riders on top bikes, so you were going to struggle to get a seat.
Because did Taran only do that year and the McCam's bike? Was that the year he just wiped the floor?
No, he was WD-40.
He
won WD-40, that's
what
right.
year would that have been? 2015? 16.
And
He won it in
17.
16, that's right. And then he did in 17. He started the year with Raceways, and then halfway through the year he got ride a Moto 2 and they let him go. He was like, he'd won every race.
He was aware of it at that point.
But I bet he never regrets that, because like no one's going to remember that second British Supersport title for him.
No.
But they'll remember his British Superbike titles. I'm not saying that Supersport's not relevant. That's not the case at all. But what he learned in Grand Prix and brought back would have been like invaluable. He was a different kid when he came back.
You need to take a chance, even just like when this year's been like the first year I've been able to get out to Spain and actually do like a wee testing program before the season starts, and
a lot of wet testing by the sounds of it.
Nah, I've been lucky. I've been in the sun, but first
He
2
took it
weeks
from Scotland, took it with him.
Jesus,
the first 2 weeks I done in January, like I'm riding round with all the Moto 2 boys, and there was Pat of Yamaha there with the R9s, so that's the first time I've ever rode round with like Moto 2, Moto 3 boys, World Super Sport riders, and you can see like that different class of rider, but they're just out on bikes all the time. And obviously that's where, if you did get to the Grand Prix or even over to Spain, you're training with just a totally different league of boys over there, aren't you?
Because I tell you what, it's like, me and Josh have joked about this. I'm dragging you under the bus with us on this one, mind, but it's a bit like, is Spain just a bit of a fad or a necessity now?
If you're riding in British Championship this year, going to Spain, you tell us what. Then I will tell you what I think, Josh. I'll tell you what I think, Rollo. I'm telling you.
Got
a seatbelt there, son. Buckle in. I'm telling you.
It totally depends what you're doing, I think. Like, I look at, for me, when I finished the season, that's why I done the mini motos for so long, because once the season finished in Scotland or BSB, I had nothing to do. So I'd be doing mini motos over like the winter to keep me on a bike, keep my bike fitness and everything. Then I'd done motocross, have like a motor trials bike. You try and keep busy, but nothing's the same as riding on tarmac, and you've still got that hunger to do that. But then sometimes that gap's good, because then when you do get back out, it's brilliant. But I think just over the years, because everyone's out in Spain training, and as well because fitness is a huge thing now, over there it's nicer to train there than back here in minus, or like I've been out here in the morning going out running before work, and it's like -3 or 4, and you're running round with like a head torch on and a jacket, and you're freezing, and then you're trying to go out cycling away up over the hills, and it's raining, it's windy, it's horrible, whereas you're in Spain and it's like 20 degrees, like you can't beat that. But my biggest thing for going to Spain this year was when I'm back home, I'm just working all the time and then doing like my house up and everything. So like you're always that busy. It's like trying to dedicate that time to go away
and do
training.
it properly, yeah.
Whereas when I'm in Spain, I've got nothing else to do. So it is like wake up, go cycling, swimming, away down to the track, like rides. I've done a couple of days at Andalusia. And then I was at Cartagena, Almeria, so it keeps you busy enough just on the bike. And some of the team members came out as well, so you are still working on stuff.
On like a stocker, you on
just
like
on a stocker, right? Just my actual bike from last year.
Yeah, was it?
So my bike, even my pathway bike, it was still just a super stock bike. So we had just took that over and used that.
Is the Superbike testing ban is it needed?
Yeah, I think so.
Now, the reason I'm saying that is because obviously, is it a cost saving exercise for banning Superbike testing? Now, the reason I'm putting that out there, because obviously you can go out there, you are now stepping up in the British Superbike Championship. You were in that same category, you're in that same race under a different category. But, the cost saving side of things, it's like you're just going to go buy a stocker and go ride all the time.
I think like Skinner was over there on a Ducati.
Yeah.
Hickman was out there on a BMW. Obviously Brooks and Hickey and Todd, they've been over in Australia doing stuff over there. Like everyone keeps riding. There's people over to Daytona now. I know it's just on a 600, but it's still riding.
That looks like a mega event.
There's everyone's just, and I think as well because there's racers now treating it as a job. They feel like you can't just have 6 months off over the winter. You've got to be doing something. So as long as the sponsors are willing to, they are giving them the money. They're going out there training, living the life. Like when I was over there, it was like the full British paddock there. There was boys from Moto3 level all the way up to Superbike level. And I'm looking at kids in Moto3, 600, Super Sport, BMW, the Cup, like there's all these guys over there and you're like, how do you get the time off work or school or anything? And you are all like living. Jack Bednarat, he's out there, he's doing super stock this year and he's been out there for like over a month, I think. And you're like, how can you do that? Like I'm over there for a couple of weeks and then back home, work, and then work every day so then I can get the time off, go out for another week, like, and do it that way. But
if you didn't go to Spain and doing what they're all doing and seeing everything on Instagram, how much mentally would that hindrance you for round one? Now, I'm going to throw a curveball out there. I spoke to him on the phone, proper gentleman, Jack Kennedy, and I was chatting about levers of all things. And he was saying, I said, well, why aren't you, multiple British champion? I said, why aren't you out riding? He goes, well, obviously now he's got his family, you know what I mean? He's looking after the family. But even prior to that, he says he never did it. And then how much would that piss you off? If you're a British super sport out all the time, everything, and then Jack Kennedy just steps off a plane, not riding, and goes, woof.
Yeah. He trains every day. He trains every day, Jack, though. Like, he still trains every day.
But that the riding bit is the expensive. It is the expensive bit, if you know what I mean.
It's a new thing, isn't it?
You can still turn up. Like last year, I'd done 3 days on the bike before we turned up to the official test, and I was the same. I was thinking, I'm moving up to British Superbikes. I'm on a pathway bike. No one knows what to expect. We don't know if it's going to be competitive or not. And like everyone I'm racing against, they're out there training, testing, everything, and I'm back home here working, and you're like, we're going to turn up here and get smoked. And then we turned up and you do all right, and you're like, oh, we can actually ride a bike, or we're fit enough and we're fast enough. But I think it's like when you look at the riders that are out in Spain and you see them on a bike, they're just so comfortable because they're just riding a bike all the time.
Yeah.
you watch Davy Todd, you watch Skinner, like when they're wheeling, stopping, and backing in the corner, sliding the bike, like they're just on a bike all the time. Doesn't matter what it is, mountain bikes, motocross bikes, supermotos.
But it's interesting. There's no, you know what I love about this sport more than anything. There's no right way, or wrong way of doing it. In some essence, if you know what I mean. Obviously, it's about getting in your own. Like, I don't know. I looking at social media alone. Another one who's like Jack is a bit Brad Ray. You know, I don't know what he does. I don't know on a personal level, not at all. I don't know if he's off training on bikes or not. But compare him to Kyle Ryde.
Yeah.
And very, very, very active. You know what I mean? Like bike riding, that is. You know what I mean? Trained, and then you've got Brad Ray. He's on his push bike in the hills of Andorra, but then he's not on a bike. And then you guarantee day one, him and Jack Kennedy are going to turn up and go.
I think Brad does do a bit of riding, trials riding, and not bikes. I think in an ideal world, if you can get out and ride a bike, you would. Why would you not? But do I think it's necessary? No. Like
Kyle Ryde, he's still going to turn up this year and be fast if he was training all winter on a bike or not. But he's getting given that opportunity. He's dreamt of it since he was a wee boy. So he's just like, if I can ride a bike, why not ride a bike?
We're not saying away. Like they've got the opportunity to do that, but I'm saying I completely agree with you. Is it a must now?
No.
Well, there we go. I
do think when you get into the very, very sharp edges of it, like let's be honest, the reason it all sort of exists is based out of like Europe, isn't it?
Time.
Yeah, but like, well, yeah, you go to Spain. We've always traditionally gone to Spain because the weather's better earlier in the year, which means you can ride earlier in the year.
Yeah, that's the bottom line of it.
We say that it's pissing down currently in Spain if you're listening. But I think at the very, very high level, it's good, and definitely like Grand Prix riders and that. The difference between when you look at British talent and Spanish talent, for example, is they were riding all the time. There was these camps at every kart track for them to be riding mini bikes and stuff like that. And I think going and riding mini bikes and stuff is fantastic, and it definitely hones your skills and definitely makes better. Do you think, like Kyle Ryde, for example, going out and having ridden a 600 all over winter, is going to feel mentally prepared and sharp to turn up at round one? Yeah, 100%. And like, will he be feeling better than if he didn't? Yeah, 100%. Is Brad Ray still going to turn up and be quick? Yeah. Like
this you know what I mean?
Mean one's right or wrong. But what really bugs me, sorry Dom, what really bugs me is like, we had this conversation a few weeks ago, didn't we? It's like, when people are like, oh fuck, like, I haven't rode my bike, I haven't been here.
I'm feeling like that now. Sitting here going, I have not done it, like pants dropping here. Like you're like thinking, I need to ride because you're watching everyone else.
But it's because it's because you're seeing all of that stuff, and like 100%, anytime you can ride a motorbike in this sport particularly, it's difficult. It's not as accessible. So go and riding a 600, go and riding whatever you can is good. I'm also a big believer in, people say practice makes perfect. Good practice makes perfect. If you fucking practice football and you shoot 500 times a day and you miss the goal, you're wasting your fucking time. Yeah. Like, it needs to be good practice. It needs to be on target practice to be relevant.
Like Kyle Ryde, that's what he's out there on an R6 and he is riding the wheels off.
Exactly.
The thing. There's Lee Johnston there who's in our team. He's putting new tyres on it, and Kyle Ryde's coming up and buying the scrubs off him, sticking them in his old, like, a road R6, and then going out there and battling with Lee Johnston. But like, Lee's obviously there testing parts, trying to improve the bike, the package, whereas Kyle's there just for bike time. But Kyle he's riding the wheels off the thing, but he's riding on a crest of the wave. He's just won the British title. He's riding the best he's ever rode. He's going out there with confidence and he's having a brilliant time. He's living the dream.
And lots of people say so I did an open evening with him at Ian Bell's Motorcycles in Bedlington a few weeks ago for the launch of the new R9. And
nice plug.
Loads of people.
I was wondering where I was going to stop.
Well, it was until you pointed it out. and he said loads of people were there and asked him lots of questions about, why do you ride an R6? Like, you're racing an R1. Like, why do you ride an R6? And it's the first time I've ever heard anybody answer it like this well. It was great. And he basically just said, I can ride an R6 at 100% all day, every day. He's like, on a used tyre. He's like, if I put a new tyre in, my lap time will be the same on that new tyre as it is on the scrub tyre. Like, at the end of the day, like, I can ride at my max all day. He went, I couldn't do that on an R1. He was like, I'd have to have new tyres on, and basically I would like be fucked.
And the thing is, if you're riding then the big bike, the 1000, and you're trying to make the tyres last, what's the point? Because you're riding your race bike to make the tyres last 40, 50 laps, but you're only ever going to need to use the tyres for 20 laps. So why ride a bike, like you're saying, at 80% to try and save the tyre or do more laps on a tyre when you're not going to have to do that in the race season?
And I think the biggest thing, yes, you can't replicate bike fitness in the gym, in my opinion. It's impossible. Like, you had this discussion recently, you can't do it. I seen a video of Michele Pirro doing some like really fucking weird gym workout the other day, and I just thought, what's the point? Like, obviously, who am I to say that? But I just looked and thought, like, of all the stuff, he had a bar on some cables, and he was like in his riding position doing this, and I just thought that's not working. I just don't believe that works. But anyway, so yes, you can't replicate bike fitness, and like the first time doesn't matter how fit you are, the first time you ride your bike again at the start of the year, your thighs hurt and bits of your knees hurt and stuff that you don't know. The biggest thing for outriding in Spain and doing all them laps at a pace for me is just you're mental and you're like being receptive to it and being able to process the speed of it and stuff like that. That's the benefit. So he's gonna turn up and feel sharp straight away, whereas it might take, like, you might be a day. You might need a day at like a steady pace. You know, your first time you go testing, you have a day and you're like, fuck, I feel like I'm trying and the times aren't coming here. Then you sleep and you wake up and you instantly go quicker. Like, it's just how it is, isn't it?
Because I'm going to speak out of turn here. Totally speak out of turn. But that underdog feeling must be quite apparent at this point. You know, like the Red Bull rookie situation, you bust the wrist and you're on a back foot. They've gone off to do that. Next part, right, you're on the back foot again. So I want to fast forward a little bit to, I'll tell you what, even in the 600s, the ZX6 wasn't the bike to be on. You think, well, I'm not quite...
Well, it was at the time when I went on to it. So
it was a big
Taz
bike then,
had just won the Super Sport Championship, and then Super Stock was like a Kawasaki Cup. There was still still a few R6s. Tom Ward was on an R6. Dan Stamper was on an R6. Like, there was still fast boys on R6s, but a lot of them were Kawasaki's. So like went into that. David Todd was in that year as well. He had came from Thundersport. Both went to BSB. Charlots had sponsored us again, but my dad had went and bought a new Kawasaki, so that was like one of the last ZX6s getting made. Bought that, took it to MSS. That's where because the bike Charlots had
just went.
Charlots had that bike they had given me was built by MSS, and the thing never missed a beat. So we're like, right, we'll get another Kawasaki. We'll go down there. Met Nick, met Naomi. Got the bike all about. Nick's like, oh, where do you think you're going to be? And we're like, well, not kill, we're lap record pace. Won the Scottish, then we went and done Thundersport at Cadwell and Donington, and we were like lap record pace at both of them as well, on the podium at Thundersport. So then we were like, so we don't think we'll be far away at BSB, and Nick was the same. He's like, nah, BSB's different level, like, you're going to have to watch. Turned up at round one, put it on the front row. I think we qualified third. My dad's standing, like, I was spewing before like that was our first like proper season at BSB, because we had got the prize from winning the 600 not kill, getting the entry fees, so that was going to be our first full year at BSB on the 600. Turned up at Silverstone, I'm spewing, my dad's like, you didn't need to ride, it's fine. Alan McIntosh is like, Lewis, just go it, just get a start, get on the back of them, just watch, learn them, like learn off them. Came round, first lap in the lead. My dad's like off the pit wall, like walking up and down. And then like Nick Morgan, he had went over and helped Alan like do my pit board and everything. I think we finished 5th in that race, but then the second round I think was Olton and we were on the podium. So like straight away we're like, God, we've turned
What's
up
Nick on about? This is a piece of piss. What does he know?
We had a brilliant year. I think I got 11 podiums in stock 6. No, sorry. So we got a good few podiums that year, and then the only thing that knocked us was I had one crash myself, so I crashed out. It was my first ever time behind a safety car at Donington at World Superbikes at the
sport race.
race. And then like I'm behind the safety car for a couple laps, and then it pulled in, and then I just tucked the front straight away. So that was the end of that race. So I crashed myself, and then there was another 3 races I got wiped out. But we still
the stock 600.
Yeah. So we finished 4th in the championship that year. We had 4 DNFs, but if we hadn't had them, we would have been in the mix for winning the title. And that's when there was the talks about 600s all stopping, and like there was going to be no stock 6. Super Sport was getting done away with and everything. So
These rumours just seem to change from class to class to class, don't they?
But it was on the cusp of that. It was on the cusp of that, and stock 600 has gone now.
Yeah. So there was all talks about that. So then Nick Morgan was like, let's go super stock 1000. And I was only 16-year-old. Jumped on a ZX10 at Cartagena, was like, holy shit.
Did you enjoy it though? You know what I mean?
I loved it.
There you are. That's the trigger, isn't it? You know what I mean?
It's the same as well. You've had all winter off, you've jumped on a new bike, you ride out the pits at Cartagena and you go, I wonder if I can still get my knee down. You get your knee down at Town 1.
Yeah, I do. I'm glad you do that as well. You know what I mean? Because I'm like that the first time you go around, you're like that going, all right, it's over and done with. You need to get it out of your system, don't you?
Then I came round first lap down the main straight. The thing's on its like wheelie in every single gear you hook. Then came out then like a few laps, you're like, oh, this is actually all right. You come through the wee chicane at Cartagena around that big long right. And I was like, oh, I'll just open it up in like 3rd gear, and the thing just goes like sideways on, and I'm like, oh, this is mental. So obviously, as a young lad, loved it. Thought, brilliant, had a good year in stock 6, come in stock 1000 and we'll be fast as straight away. But I think first round we got like an 11th and 12th, so we were straight in the points.
Jesus, mate, how way?
You were quick straight away, weren't you?
We were happy with that. We thought, oh, perfect, like we're gonna do brilliant.
I tell you what, I'm gonna say something. You know, if you didn't tell me that you threw up before races, all joking, you know what I mean, that early start, you would just be like an arrogant prick now. No, I'm being like, you'd be like, oh, I just turned up and I did this, and I'm like, no, it just shows how much you want it by going, oh, you got that revved up to go do it.
I'm still the same now.
Really?
Oh, I'm an absolute mess. Like,
at least people see if you're running at them, you know where you're going now. So happy did.
So we went.
Have you ever done anything to just on that topic? Have you ever done anything to try and stop it?
Nah.
Sorry.
I love it. Like when I was younger on the mini bikes, my dad went to Alan like, Lewis is being sick, he's nervous, like in the morning he's waking up like he's that bad. I'm like saying we don't need to go to the racing, and then I was like, no, Dad, I want to go, but like my dad felt like he was probably forcing me out. Like my dad's not once ever in my full career,
not a motocross dad at all,
never once hung over a barrier waving at me, and that's what Alan said as well. That's why Alan helped me, because he was like, you're actually the first parent I've ever seen that isn't forcing your kid. Like Lewis is just happy to be there riding round.
Yeah,
we had
class.
You know, like when they had the wall boxes with like the handle that pulls out with the wheels. We had one of them as our toolbox, and my dad would be sat at Kirkcaldy with that in the pit, sitting on that with his work's yellow jacket on, watching me just ride round, and I'd be the only kid at like 8 o'clock at night still riding round. But
class.
Alan loved that about me. I was always practicing, always racing, and then I was spewing, and my dad was like, oh, how do I stop Lewis from being so nervous? And Alan went, the day he's not nervous is the day you give up racing. He went, that nerves is
good
hunger, like it gives you. And then even like through career, and I think as well, I was just so young going into every class, you didn't know what to expect. Like went in the super teens as 12-year-old, you're no worried about a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old laddie. Like you're just like, oh, going racing. Then 16-year-old on the 600, I just thought, it's just we're getting the race bikes, like just loved it. Same with the 1000. Like I've always doubted myself, like always thought, oh, I need to prove people wrong or try and be competitive. And then we went into super stock, done all right at the start. Knockhill was our best round. I think we got a 7th there in super stock, but I just kind of crashed my brains out. And like, but just same again, just the hunger, always wanting to try and be at the front or feel like you wanted to be there instead of learning. But I was just a 17-year-old lad and my family was putting everything into it. Nick was helping us out. He had gave us a bike to use for the year, like MSS had gave us a Kawasaki, so he was trying to get a team running again, because obviously he had his big team and then had to finish all that, and then he was trying to get back in the paddock running a team. So he had gave us a bike to use. We had to run it ourselves. We never had any data guy. Nick would get to the odd round and do stuff for us, but we did struggle. And then I was meant to ride for him again, and that's when he phoned me. It was like the 17th of February, and we were meant to be like part of all Team Green, and there was that Cool Milk, was it? The
Cool Milk,
Masseyberg
Monday, wasn't it?
Like there was all these.
He's going to be teammates with Chrissy at this point then, at Masseyberg Monday.
It's Tom Ward, wasn't it?
Tom Ward,
You were the year before this, I think.
Yeah,
that's
so there
right.
was like,
that's right, yeah.
there was all of this stuff trying to happen and it just didn't happen. So he phones me like middle of February saying we can't go racing, and it was like on a Thursday or Friday night. Turned up to the Knockhill presentation because I had won the Scottish Superbike Championship on the ZX10, so like we had still kept racing in Scotland, still kept busy, so that was good because you'd be at BSB and you'd be like, fucking I'm shite here, like riding and like trying to score points and everything, but then you'd turn up to the Scottish and you would win by a mile. And then even Chrissy, he came up to Knockhill, done the Scottish before the BSB went there, and like it was good at there because I could actually, where he was at the front of the championship, I would never get on the back of them to learn in the race, whereas at the Scottish I could take off and get a few laps behind them. So I probably learnt more that year at Knockhill chasing Chrissy around than what I was at BSB. But it was still, I look at everything's meant to happen for a reason. People are like, you shouldn't have went super stock at 17, and I'm like, but why not? If you get given that opportunity,
what else would you have done? Like,
take it.
Exactly.
So we done that, and then we went Ducati to try options, and that was probably my best year because the year after. So it was, yes, it was a backstep, but it was like Dennis Hobbs was running the team. It was actually High Sparks Racing, no, who Luke Jones was riding for in Supersport. So Shane had a good outfit. He had 5 bikes in the garage. He was like, we've got plenty of spares bikes. We'll put you out for the year. So done that. It was only 8 rounds, but it was good for my dad because he had such a financial year paying for super stock and my crashes that it kind of let us get back on our feet that year doing the try options.
I must ask, when you're riding the bike, the nerves, like the value of a quid, what I mean, you work, you've sweat floor, you know what I mean, you've grafted your entire life. Was a financial fear ever a worry?
When I was younger, no, because I understood money and everything, and my dad he made me go out and work. Like he's like, I never even had summer holidays. I'm making my dad sound bad here, like, but
it sounds great. I'll tell you what, the amount of riders we've had sat there and gone, the dad's like an abuser, really.
I never had summer holidays because my dad would be like, Lewis, I'm not going out to work to pay for your racing and you be out playing with your pals. So I was out on building sites and everything. So I appreciated everything my dad done. But because they were my dad's bikes and I always seen him fix them, like it didn't bother me. But as soon as I then went with MSS that year on the ZX10, crashing it, getting bills through for fixing it, like I could see my dad struggling, and he was out like 7 days a week every night, and I think he even missed rounds because he was still working. And by like 2 or 3 rounds to go, I had a couple big crashes and I could see it affecting my dad, and I was like, and then it affected my riding. And then my dad was like, Lewis, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you no crashing? And or like trying. I was like, well, I know if I crash, you can't afford to fix it. And then if I'm not racing, I'm not going to get a ride for next year because I'm not going to be able to do the last 2 or 3 rounds. So my dad's like, oh, don't be silly. Like, that's not your problem. We'll work that out. Like, my dad would never moan at me or get annoyed with anything. Like, even folk with the mini bikes, I would be out crashing like a mini bike. And people would be like, oh, are you not bothered? My dad's like, no, he's out there trying. Like, why am I going to tell him not to ride round at 80% when he wants to ride at 100%?
What a man.
So my dad was always, my dad still is behind me. He knows when I'm happy, when I'm sad, but the nerves is just, I think that is the hunger. You know how much your family work, how much you work to make everything happen, even sponsors. You know how hard it is to go out and make £1,000. So for a sponsor to be able to give you that, you appreciate, but then for sponsors to then turn around and go, I'll give you £5,000, £10,000, and then even team sponsors to be putting hundreds of thousands of pounds in, you're like, it's absolutely crazy. So even now, I think part of my nerves and hunger to do it is because I know how hard everyone's had to work to, not just to get the bike out there, but to make the money to make it happen. And it isn't a cheap sport. It is hard. And as well as a rider, I'm not one of them who's like, oh, I need to be making wages, things like that. I know people have to take money because how else are you going to go racing if you've not got the money? So like, you don't mind that side of it, but it's that bridge between working all the time and then making it a career, actually doing the racing full time.
But then you went to the try options. Now that would have been prize money at this point. So at this point, is that right? Try options would have been prize money.
Not sure if it was.
I don't know.
I don't think it's quite the same as BMW. BMW Cup's got quite a bit of backing from BM and
I don't know.
Rocket.
I was like one of the last years of the Ducati try options.
Right.
But it was a brilliant year. Like, finished second in the championship.
I didn't realise you did a full season at that, Lewis. Sorry, I thought you just did a few rounds.
So I'd done full year on that. That was with Sean Neary and Guyver, Phil Atkinson. So there was like older boys who were fast, and then I learned a lot off of them. And the Ducati was still quite a torquey bike, so you're still learning that big bike feeling.
Yes.
Done that, and then Shane also had on a 1199 Ducati V2, like. It was like a 2011. We had bought crashed parts from like America and everything, built this bike up, went to BSB, done just a few wild cards and super stock. I think not kill maybe a 5th or a 6th or something. And then we done brands at the end of the year. Had an oil leak in it in qualifying, so I ended up like 23rd on the grid, and then it rained overnight. But same as well, like, I had the hard year in super stock. I had obviously had a kind of brilliant career up to then, like youngest at everything, winning championships, hard year in super stock, then went into try options and still never had like any projection, like where am I going to go from here. I didn't even know if I was going to get back in super stock again, and then I didn't even know if I wanted to do it because I had such a bad year.
So what age was that then? 16, 17?
I was 17, 18 then.
So 17, 18. That is so young, and at this point you feel like it's stalled.
Well,
in theory, like this, I don't know where to go from here. It's like, that's mental, isn't it?
Yeah.
I looked at MSS as getting in the door with them. When I had grew up, when I was going and watching British Superbikes, they were one of the biggest teams in the paddock. So you've watched them since a kid, and then you're riding for them, and people like Stuart Easton and that had rode for them in the past. So then I've known Stuart since I was a kid, so you're like, oh, I'm in team now and we're going, and then all of a sudden that all ended. So you're in the try options, riding the wheels off thing. I had fun, like absolutely loved the class, loved the racing, really close, got my confidence back because you're at the front fighting for wins. Then you go, done the few super stock rounds, really good, like Thruxton, the Ducati was really good round there. So we were like right up the sharp end, fighting with boys that I was nowhere near the year before. So like I was like, oh, actually I can do this. And then the last round at Brands, it rained the Saturday night. The Sunday, Keith Farmer and was it Keith Farmer and Billy McConnell fighting for the championship, and Taylor McKenzie was involved in it, Michael Rutter, and I came from 23rd on the grid, got right through to the lead in this wet race, and we're battling away on this Ducati. And then I had Keith Farmer crashed, Billy McConnell crashed, so that decided championship. And then Taylor went into the hairpin, he tucked the front and I tucked the front behind him into gravel. And I'm minging, but it was the best race I had because I was fighting at the front of Superstock. And then after that, Ian had phoned me, Bilby, Suzuki, Honda. So then, like, all of a sudden, the big teams at front of Superstock were phoning me, like, offering me bikes. Like Suzuki and Honda, they were just offering me a bike. You know how they give you a bike and you run it yourself, like what Tom Oliver's done, and people on Hondas and that. But I was like, well, I don't have a team or the budget to run a Superstock team, so I can't do that. And then that's when my dad wasn't very well as well, so he was the one who used to kind of run me. So then he wasn't able to do it. Alan McIntosh, he had took a back step at that point, so he couldn't commit to a full season. So I was kind of left myself. And then that's when Ian Newton, when I had spoke to him and then first signed for doing Superstock on the Aprilia.
But you see, that was actually almost going back to me comment. It was like, you know, that underdog element, because the Aprilia in Stock 1000 at this point was that their first time? Have they been running Aprilias for years?
They had Joe Collier.
Joe Collier, that's it.
Joe Burns rode one for Ian in 2000 and when I rode that Ducati, when was that? 2015. 2015 Joe rode one. That was the first time I ever seen one in Stock 1000. I remember at Silverstone, I remember thinking, then this thing looks lovely. It looked like a big 250.
Aye.
Yeah, like really nice thing. But then there was nothing, and then Joe rode one.
I think it was David Allingham, EHA, David Allingham's team. They had the two super sport bikes, and then they had a super stock bike.
Yeah.
I think Ben Wilson, Seeley, Luke Hedger.
That's it, yeah.
Then Joe Collier and Andy Reid went on them.
Yeah.
All on the Aprilias.
Andy Reid didn't last the season, though, did he?
No, he was fast. Like, see, we even still look at his data now because how quick he was.
Yeah.
But he just couldn't
That's it.
stay on
These
the
really still look. That's funny, that. Because Andy would, like, go off, come back, be the comeback kid, and then he'd have 2 seasons and then have a big crash, and then you wouldn't see him for 2 years. He'd come back again.
But Ian said, like, Ian's really old school and, like, proper by the book, like, everything. Like, I'd eat a banana when I'm sitting in the garage. Why are you eating a banana? It takes an hour for a banana to, like, kick in, so you should have been eating it, like, an hour ago. No, now when you're sitting in the garage. But Andy Reid, he'd turn up, like, 10 minutes into qualifying, walking in the garage with his leather still round his waist. And they'd be like, what are you doing? Like, why are you late? Get out on the bike. And then he's like, I only need 1 lap. And they're
That's
like,
class.
Looking at him like, what the hell? And then he put his leathers on, jump on the bike, go out and put on pole. And then you can't say anything because he's done the job. Like, break lap records, win races, whereas Joe Collier was on time, doing his job, and he had a good year. I think Joe...
Yeah, he was up the sharp end, wasn't
he got podiums, won races and everything.
But then, you see, why didn't the Aprilia take off then? Now, the reason I'm asking, like, you know, the underdog thing is a bit like, it's the Honda 1000 Cup now. And then before that, Kawasaki had their turn, and same with BM and everything. You know, I call it the iPhone class, Stock 1000, because what's the bike winning? What's everyone winning? And everyone goes and buys it, and then it's like 80% of the grid of that. So when you think about what the Aprilia can do, you've ridden it, and you've seen the results in the past, why aren't more people buying the Aprilia?
It's a 1200, isn't it?
1100 now, but it was on 1000 then.
Yeah.
So the first 2 years I rode it, it was 1000cc, but it was an older bike. Like, they first came out in 2009, and the framing that's actually only changed slightly. Like, it's still the same bike really from when it first came out. So they ran it. It was competitive, but I think
because Ian Newton's the only person.
Yeah, Aprilia's hard to deal with. I think getting parts, getting stuff over. Like,
right.
I don't think that once they stopped World Superbikes, there was an article recently from their man from MotoGP, basically like condemning World Superbikes, saying it's like low-level prototype racing now. It's like so advanced that they have no real focus on it. And I think there was nothing from Aprilia for years, was there? There was just no real input other than in MotoGP. So
I think Ian's just had a connection because he was 250s back in his day.
Yeah. We'd love to get him on the show. So if he's listening to this, please, we'd love to get you on the show. We really would.
That can be your action. You've got to get him on.
He's like, he was a doer back in his day on his 250, had ties with Aprilia then he done the super teens for years, the 250 challenge, the Millie challenge, the 450 challenge, so like huge connection with Aprilia. And then I think the super teens stopped, Thundersport stopped, so then he was like, okay, what do I do now? And then started he was huge pals with Ed Allingham, David Allingham's dad, so they joined teams and then ran the super stock team out of there, and then they parted ways, and Ian was like, well, I'll keep running my own team. Done the super stock side of it. So I was the first year that Ian ran by himself, like out in his own team rather than with like Edward Allingham and that. And then we had a good first year just building, and Ian was really good for me. He had known me since I was a young lad, and he was just like letting me ride the bike the way I wanted it, but then just teaching me and adapting. So we had a brilliant first year, signed for a second year, and then finished third in super stock. So that was
was that 2020?
That was a COVID year,
because it was like Chrissy, Tom, and I remember.
But it's same again, brilliant year. Still Billy McConnell, Farmer, like all the doers in it. So it was a good year racing, even though it was like a reduced season. And then I went Lee Hardy on the Kawasaki, but that was the same. Ian kind of thought that Aprilia was going to get left behind a wee bit because it was the 1000cc, and everyone was like, all the new bikes were coming out, the new Honda, BMWs and everything, and then Ian never had any like thoughts about going Superbike at that time either, and it was really hard. Like me, Tom and Chrissy, you're like top 3 in the championship, you'd think that there would be Superbike teams talking to us, and there was no one.
No,
and mental. That's why Chrissy was like, well, I'm just going to do my own thing, because what else are you meant to do? So then Ian had said to me, right, Lewis, you can't do your own thing, so you need to try and get a connection with a Superbike team. So try and go in to a Superbike team on a super stock bike, do a year, have a good year, and then progress on to the Superbike. So that's what I done with Lee Hardy, jumped back on the Kawasaki. It wasn't the bike to be on. Oh, Chrissy went onto the Kawasaki that year as well, didn't he? Yeah. It was me, him, Keith Farmer was on a new one, Luke Mossy.
Oh, that was the WD-40.
Because Chrissy was thinking the same, he was thinking get on the Kawasaki stalker to then
progress
get
up
onto the Superbike.
Right, So when was that, 21?
That was 21, so Chrissy won it in 20. And then 21, he went to GR.
That's right,
On the GR, and then the following year after that was Superbike. And then that was, hold on, Pathway was only last year, first year.
Pathway was only last year for the first year. So I went with Lee Hardy. We never had a bad year. Still got a podium at Donington.
You had a problem with it for ages, didn't you? Like a clutch. It ended up being a clutch or something, wasn't it?
It was a clutch, but the thing was juddering. But we were all the same. Chrissy, Mossy, we were all rattling our brains out. But we got the thing fixed for like the last round at
It's
Brands.
typical, isn't it? Yeah.
Had a hard year. Lee Hardy was like, no, Lewis, still want to give you an opportunity, because I think in the contract it was like if you finished top 5 in the championship they would discuss like the Superbike ride, and I think we finished 6th or 7th in the championship. So Lee was like, no, I still want to try and make the Superbike thing go ahead. So we went over to Spain, done a test at Cartagena. That all went well.
On the Superbike? What was your first thoughts?
Good, because Jake Dixon had been on it, then Vickers had been on it, so it was 2 young lads moving up. So Lee was really good as well with
the management
making
element,
adapting to the Superbike. He never expected you to be like an older experienced rider to jump on it and be fast straight away. Like, he just wanted to see you progress. And as well, Les Pierce had came over with us that week, so he he was just new to the team as well, so like he was
was
trying
good,
things.
yeah.
So like we worked away, and then Haslam went out the week after, and then obviously when Lee was approaching team sponsors, they're looking at Haslam as a huge name and Lewis Rollo as a nobody. So, like, Lee was desperate to get me on the Superbike, but all, like, team sponsors and BSB and everything, like, BSB wanted to keep Haslam in the championship as well. So, like, everything kind of went in his favour. He got the Superbike ride, and Lee was gutted, but then that's when I had spoke to Padgett's, and
Of course, Padgett's in the middle of that.
Oh, I forgot you rode for them.
Bloody hell, well done for correcting us two there. Jeez.
Clive had sorted that out, so that was quite a late thing as well coming about, because obviously the plan was going Superbike, so everything was meant to be.
Did Clive approach you, or did you approach Clive?
No, so Craig Curry, he was sponsoring me at the time. He was doing sidecars, and he actually had bought his first ever motorbike off of Clive, so he had known Clive for like 20 odd years, and then he had been speaking to Clive, and I think just saying what was happening, and Clive was like, oh well, I'm trying to get into Superstock and run a team, and Davey, like, we need Davey on the short circuits as well, so we'd be interested in running Lewis and having him for a BSB side and Davey for kind of the roads. But we turned up, me and Clive, we got him brilliant, like team brilliant, like a roads team. It wasn't professional in a way, it's more like everyone's family and get on, but things just didn't,
people aren't there for the wage kind of thing.
It just didn't quite click. Obviously, I don't know, I'm going in with a lot of pressure on myself, thinking
Got to be at the front.
I've been at the front of Superstock, I've had a good year, then I've had a bad year in Superstock, then I was going to be given an opportunity to go Superbikes, then I never got that opportunity, so then you're trying to prove a point, then I'm going in, and I said the season went wrong from round one, and it's not until now I've realised that. Like, round one, put it on pole, I think, take off, leading the race, drop back to second behind Olsen, had a brake problem, came into turn 3, came in, no brakes, clipped the back Alex Olsen, wiped him out, so bad press straight away. Then the second race, I was like, right, I just need to just finish this just to get a race done with for the first round. Finished 4th, and I left the round absolutely gutted that I hadn't been on the podium, whereas Davey had finished 5th, and that was his best dry result in Superstock, so he was leaving round 1 happy, positive, like, oh, done like really well, we weren't far off Lewis, we finished 5th, he finished 4th, whereas I left like, oh, I wasn't on the podium, I should have won the race, done this, everything, could have, should have, and then left there negative, went to the next round, tried even harder again, had an offer, whatever, like never got results I wanted, and then it was hard as well because you were on bikes for years with data, and then you went to Clive and he doesn't run data. So I would explain things maybe in a different way to like a roads rider would explain something, or like there was just, and obviously Clive was working with Davey on the roads, so they had like Davey had been riding for Clive for years, so they had a really good connection and like relationship to make things work, and they were away road racing one week, I'm back home, and then we're turning up to BSB. It was a wee bit mixed up, but it wasn't a great year for me. And then I ended up breaking my back at Donington.
Oh, Jesus.
So that high-sided out the chicane, came down, broke my back, so I missed the last 2 rounds of that year. So that, I don't know, I was in agony. I actually crashed on the Saturday, broke my back, went out and warm up on Sunday morning. The bike was bent.
I'll sleep it off, don't worry.
I know, like I landed, I had burst on my nose, like came down on my face, burst on my nose, burst my teeth, my lips and everything. So I was that bothered about that. I was like, I'm ugly as it is, no matter that.
Shut up, man.
got a big nose as it is, so like breaking my nose wasn't great. So I wasn't worried about my back. drove home on the Sunday. Went to work on the Monday. I was on a roof fitting rafters, like pulling these 7-meter rafters up onto a roof, fitting them with my wee cousin. And then like I'm bent over, fitting sarking and everything. And then like it comes to 3 o'clock, I'm like, I'm no right. So went home, went straight to my bed, woke up at like 3 in the morning or something, drove myself up to the hospital, sat in there for 11 hours, and then they come, like, sat on a plastic chair. I walked in, I was like, I broke my back, and they're like, you no broke your back. I'm like, I'm telling you, like, I'm
not good here.
No. Not good. Sat there for 11 hours, then they come through with a stretcher. I'm like, oh, don't move. Got me on this stretcher, strapped me down, pulls me through. And then they're like, you've broke your back. I'm like, I tell you that 11 hours ago. They walked back through half an hour later. They're like, see how you've sat in a chair all day? Like, does it not bother you? I'm like, well, it's no great. And they're like, oh, because we need the bed for someone else. I was like, Ken, what? I'm away. Like, all I needed was an answer to say I've broke my back. And then it means I'll only go to work in the morning, because if not, I will go back to work tomorrow and just keep trying. So my brother made me have like I think it was a week or 2 weeks off work. And then I was back working, but I was still in agony, had a bad year. Was like ready to hang the leathers up, and then Ian Newton phoned me. He's like, Lewis, I don't know what I'm doing next year. I've not got any riders sorted, but I'm going to be selling bikes off, but we're going to have a track day at Olton if you fancy coming down and riding the bike. So I had never rode the 1100. I had only ever been on the 1000. So I went down, jumped on that, and had the best day ever. It was like Olton Park in November. I think it was like the last track day of the year. Freezing cold, damp, but I just went out and had some fun just riding round, and that's when it got like the team sponsors excited. I was happy, my sponsors were excited, and they were like let's go back to Ian and make that work.
And this is when like Chris Barnes is getting involved with the team.
No, that was so that year it was just super stock. So I went back with Ian in super stock. Good year, podiums, pole positions, lap records, everything. Like, where did we? I can't mind where we finished in the championship. I think 5th or 6th or something in the championship finish. But we're at the sharp end, fighting away.
The feeling's back. The feeling's good.
No, we were happy. I was happy with Ian. And then there was a Sportbike Cup in that getting released.
Yeah.
And that's where we met Chris, because Chris had gave Ian a 660 to use. For like promoting it, know how we had to go out and do the laps and give people shots of the bike. So that was Chris's bike, and he was just in the garage one day, like, oh, do you know anyone selling a Superbike? Because I'd like to buy one and then give it to like a team to run. And we're like, it's no quite as easy as that. Like, no normal folk can just run a Superbike in BSB. But we had said like we're interested in doing Superbike. And then there was the pathway talks and everything. So then we're like, okay, if that door's opening and we can go pathway and it's kind of reduced budget and we can go racing, then we'll have a shot at that.
And let's just jump straight into it. Let's talk. What were your expectations of that season? Pathway a bike. Now, for people obviously who probably don't know, a pathway a bike is upgraded brakes.
Well, we never even had that.
He didn't even have that.
We did put the caliper. No, well, our wheels were quite
I remember you telling us this at Goodwood. You just put them on and took them off.
Well, our wheels were light as it is, so we never even tried running other wheels. We put the calipers on, but they kept warping discs. So
too much power.
My hands just squeezing it. But we ended up just putting the standard calipers back on. In the Aprilion Super Stock, it runs Motec in super stock, so for us going pathway it was no difference. We were on the same electronics, whereas the Honda and everything, they are going from kit ECUs and super stock to the Motec, so that's where they struggled a wee bit. But I don't know, first round turned up at Nevada, track I had never been at before.
No.
Testing went rubbish, racing went rubbish. Was like a nervous wreck. I mind.
So you're thinking you're on for a bad year.
Why was it rubbish? Like, why? What was the reason?
I think, no, well, It wasn't rubbish. Like, I think it just like, oh shit, this is going to be hard. Like, you knew it was going to be hard.
It was a rough ride.
You turn up, you don't know where the bike's going to be. You don't know where you're going to be. You're racing against guys. I was fine with the likes of Danny Buchan and Lee Jackson, that, because you've raced them in super stock. But it was boys like Josh Brooks and Glenn Irwin and that, who you've watched for years and but never raced against. And when I was in testing, I went out and I was like behind Brooks, and I mind coming in and my dad was standing on top of the garage at Navarra, and he's like, "You were keeping up with Josh Brooks there." And I was like, "I can, Dad," but like, I think it was just such a shock to the system. You're riding round the track. I struggled to learn the track.
It's a weird place, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think as well, I didn't know how much difference the tyre was, like the zero rear compared to the one in super stock.
Probably wasn't the best place for you to go first off if you went to Alton Park or something like that.
Somewhere you knew.
That was the biggest thing for us. So Navarra, you come round turn 1, but like that turn 2 is obviously a sharp corner. You'd usually come out of there and pick up the throttle and start spinning, but because I had grip, I'd get the power and then the bike would wheelie and it would run wide. Then that next fast left, you'd come through there sliding, but I never knew like how kind of hard to push the bike or changes. And if we were in super stock, I'd know the lap times to chase or the people who I'm chasing, whereas in Superbikes, I'm like watching a Superbike go through a corner and like, well, is that just the difference between a Superbike and a stocker? Really, we were on just a super stock bike, so I'm like, is that the difference? And so Navarra, we struggled. We were still there, like we were still battling with Danny Buchan, Braden Elliott.
Is that were they in the pathway class at that point then? Because obviously this is where this season it's beginning of the separation of the classes, isn't it? It's all the same race.
So last year was the pathway, so it was pathway in the Superbike class.
Yes, but I mean, like, where were you in that category? In round 1.
Well, I never finished either race.
Well, there's the answer for that one. There you go. So
we came off and tucked the front in race 1, and then the clutch went in race 2.
Got you.
So it just was like, right,
get me out of Spain.
Over. But to be fair, probably the best thing that ever happened, because we started at rock bottom. Anything was better than round 1.
Not the best advice to any people wanting to come up through in a Superbike, by the way. Have a shit first round and then build it up from there. It is good, but
of your life,
but you say that, like, I remember...
It's right, though. You're right. I like as a team scan.
The year before, when I was working with Jack at Martrain, he was like running at the front at the first round and like doing really well. Silverstone, like things were going well, and then it was like, fucking hell, Jack, when are you gonna win? And then it was just a hard season. He had some good results, but it was like a hard season. Yeah, because you'd started the season like almost so well, it was like difficult.
That's what, like, going into that round 1. I'm buzzing because I'm finally in Superbikes. I walk into the garage, I'm crying, my dad's crying, like cuddling each other, thinking like, fucking, we've got this opportunity. Then I go straight in the toilet, and then I'm spewing in the toilet because I'm that nervous. Then I'm sitting at the back of the Superbike grid with like the team round me. They're all buzzing because like they're not looking at it as bad as me. I'm like, this is going to be a hard year. Being at the back and not even being anywhere near the points at that point. And then we turned up to Olton. I think we came back and had the Olton test. And that went all right. I kind of got going a wee bit there. Got down to at least like super stock lap record pace. And then round 1 at Olton. But that's where we noticed, like, because you know the track so well, I'd be going round Island Bed and I'd be like, I can't get on the power like I usually do. And then I'd go back, obviously give that info to the team. They'd be like, all right, well, actually it's gripping, like, so we maybe need to lose a wee bit of grip. And that was the issue. Like, with the Aprilia engine being so torquey, and then the way the chassis works, like, you do get a lot of grip from the rear end, even with like no electronic aids or whatever. Yeah. So then we had to obviously like change throttle maps, change suspension and everything just to get the bike sliding and working. And
so what were you doing, giving it more power to spin?
Just the difference. So like in super stock, to try and battle against Hondas and BMs with traction control, we would change our throttle maps to tame it down so it wasn't high siding you, and you would tame down the power. Whereas with a Superbike tyre, because you've got more grip, you can take it a bit more. aggression, then just changing riding style, pushing on that little bit more, getting pulled along with the Superbikes. And we had a good Oulton Park. I think we were maybe like a 16th and an 18th or something. Overall. And then we were battling, we won the pathway class, won both of them. So that was a wee bit of a
25 win? Was it? It was
25 wins.
Was that?
Pathway wins.
Was it? Yeah.
And a podium. And a podium at Snetted as well.
Can we talk about that wet? Them years of your dad chucking in wet tyres and mini motors. Like you must have just thought, because I tell you who must have been the happiest person at paddock, Stuart Higgs, because he must have just gone, there we go, a pathway bike.
I don't think he was happy.
Was he not? Oh no, but you know what I mean. No, it's like it just showed that the bikes are there. You know what I mean? Mate, you rode the fucker. It was brilliant.
No, well, we turned up to Donington round 3. We got our first points. And that was a brilliant race because I got a really good start, got through, and I got up to like 9th place or something. So like I learnt loads. Even though I dropped back, you're still riding around with them. And I got like a 14th or 15th. So got our first points. So that was good because you're like, oh man, we've got a point. I've got a point in Superbikes.
What did it feel like when you started riding in Superbike? Did you notice that like people rode differently, like at the start of the race, or just?
I would say it's easier than super stock. Obviously, your pace is faster and everything, but super stock, that first lap
is mental.
Oh, wild! And then your first laps are wild, and then as well, like even at the end of the race, you'd be fighting for like 15th in super stock, so you're getting 1 point, and it would be like someone would absolutely clear you just to get that point. Whereas in Superbike, there's a lot more involved. Like they know there's even finishing 16th, it's still giving sponsors
a
like
good bit of something,
coverage, and you need to like.
There's a lot more respect there.
Results, and the riders are more experienced. That first lap, they're like not really bothered because we've got 20 laps to sort it out.
Yeah,
like
don't need to be going.
It is a bit more relaxed, and I don't know. I like that, and it let you learn, follow them, as well. At first, none of them were worried about the pathway bike. So none of them, whenever they passed me, they wouldn't like roll off or worry about me. So I could then tag on to them, hold on to them, and like I mean, like Oulton Park, I managed to do a full lap behind Kyle Wright. Like I mean, on his wheel, and I don't know if he was maybe off pace a wee bit, but I still stayed with him. And then I done my quickest ever lap round Oulton, and it was like 0.6 or 0.7 under the super stock lap record. So we're like you're shifting, and things like wee moments like that. That's what like was the best thing for us, because you've got I don't know. You're just so much to learn. You're going in, there's no pressure because no one knows what the pathways bike's capable of. No.
I tell you what, sorry, quick question from Andy Ryder, one of our patrons. It's like, are there any changes for the bike for the new season in pathway?
Just for the pathway class.
The only one I think in the pathway this year is Luke Hedger's teammate, is he?
Oh, really?
You know how CDH, they're running 2 bikes, so I think
I think he's more referring to like the actual, the regs. Can he change more with the bikes or anything like that, or?
So on a pathway bike, you had to go to Motec Electronics, but we were already on that. So the Honda and the BMW, they had to change to Motec. Then you were allowed to change headstock angle, brakes,
swing arm pivot as well.
Swing arm pivot. You were allowed to change calipers, master cylinder,
wheels,
tank. You were allowed to put a Superbike tank on, but the Aprilia's got a plastic tank, so it's not like we can just cut that and weld onto it.
No, you have to make alley ones.
To just make a wee, like a fuel cell for sitting underneath it. So we just cut the subframe, cut like a bar out the subframe, and then made like a wee extended tank. But even some rounds we never had to run that. We could just brim the tank and get away with it.
Yeah.
So our bike was just a stalker, really.
And other pathway bikes stay in the same regulations for this year?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think because last year
It works so well.
we kind of proved once we got going and you get the confidence, like we were fighting for points every weekend and getting points pretty much every weekend.
It's as much for the teams as the riders, I think.
That's
Pathway.
keeping the cost.
Well,
making it more accessible, the Superbike class.
Also educating the teams, like Superstock teams who are coming up and then need to make that step, because it's no joke, is it? It's
Motec's enough to learn. Trying to learn Motec is hard enough, no matter them putting a swing arm in it, big like forks, brakes. Like next year, this year now, for my Superbike, people are like, oh, you're getting a full Superbike. I'm like, this bike I'm getting now, I've never rode it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a completely different bike. Not one thing on it.
So how are you going about building that then? Because there isn't a World Superbike team or anything to like have a model to acquire from. So what are you changing swing arm and stuff like that? Nah,
so Ian had a huge relationship with Maxton Suspension, with Super Teens and everything like that. So he's been Maxton through and through. But Maxton had stopped doing Superbike forks. So we have got Olin's Superbike forks to go in it to start with AIM. We're keeping the Maxton rear shock that we just ran last year. We're keeping the standard swing arm.
Yeah.
We'll probably try like linkage or something with the rear. We did get other wheels, but the wheels were at the standard Aprilia wheels weren't actually far away weight wise
so you just stick
with different wheels. So I think we'll stick with them. Brakes. I think maybe like you can do like a gearbox rate, because we're the 1100. We aren't allowed like a full Superbike engine like everyone else.
But that's good. Right. That's brilliant for cost, isn't it?
People don't use the full power anyway.
No, they're constantly taking power out. Yeah.
I'll tell you, like, this is a good question from Jess Mortimer, one of our patrons. You seem to gel well with the Aprilia. What about it suits your style, and where do you think you can make improvements to the Aprilia? Are those changes that you're talking about to the Superbike?
I'll have a quick look at these.
What would you change about the Aprilia? That's a great question, Jess, but what would you change about the Aprilia?
Well, in Superstock, obviously Josh Owens was on it last year, brilliant year, podiums, fighting at the front, so it's a competitive bike no matter what. But in Superstock, I think the electronics hold it back too much, obviously because it's 1100, they try and restrict it, so they put the Motec electronics on it, but everyone else has got traction control. So in Superstock you are held back with that element. But then when you go in Superbikes, it's a totally different thing, because everyone's on the Motec, so that's fine. You've still got 200 odd brakes, so you've still got power there. And so it's more down to the chassis. And that's where you notice, especially when I started battling with a lot more, I don't want to say, like, well, the sharp end boys, and we battled in the dry, like even Fruxton, I got up to 3rd place in the dry at Fruxton. And you think like fastest track in the UK, you'd think about power or speed, but we were on the lowest powered bike on the grid. We could look after the tyre and our chassis worked well, but that's probably where, then we went to like Cadwell and we struggled hugely there, because that's when the difference with like the headstocks, the yokes, the forks, the brakes, gearbox ratios, clutches, engine braking, even just a data guy in the front of the Superbike's just a different level, doing whatever they're doing, like with throttle maps and engine braking, swing arms, linkages, shocks, wheels. I think Vickers' bike was like 12 kilos lighter than my bike when we weighed them last year after a race.
Jesus.
So like straight away you think, well, I'm heavier than Vickers as well. So
on top of a heavier bike,
I'm heavier and the bike's heavier and we've got less power.
Sorry.
So this year will be huge for us, because it is going to be a big change bike-wise and team-wise as well, because we've got Pete Jennings on board as well.
Have you?
Crew chief.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So
I was about to say, you haven't really talked about crew chiefs. Is this the first time? Obviously, Clive was a bit like, obviously I know that was a different situation, but like, has this been Pete Jennings your first crew chief really?
Well, when I was with Lee Hardy, we had like an electronics guy.
Yes,
even like my mechanic at the time, Luke Quigley, he was an ex-racer in Superstock, like proper doer. Same again when he raced. So like me and him spoke a lot and like made suspension changes. We never had like a proper crew chief sit down, and same with Ian, like our team's quite funny because even the mechanics will get involved. So like they've worked with the bike for so long, they know what works and what doesn't. They've worked with all the riders. So like we'll all sit down, Richard from Maxton, Ian, Alex doing the computer. We did have Sam Palmer a couple of years ago. Like we'd all sit down. There's like 3 or 4 computers out there all looking at data and everything. Then we come up with an idea.
After an hour, I'll just leave it. Just leave it. I'll go faster. Just leave it alone.
Like, if it works.
But this year's the first time I would say proper working with like a crew chief who is dedicated to be there.
Yeah.
To like make.
And
it
has
happen.
Ian put that in place? And has he said this is happening?
I just think the team.
You're too laid back. He's a clat, isn't he? He's like,
the team's wanting to grow. We obviously had a good year. We don't have a clue.
Yeah.
What
so
we're
get
doing.
someone who's.
So we're like, we need someone who's got like an idea. Alex, who was doing our data last year, that was his first ever year doing data like full time. Like before that he was a mechanic on the bike, and all he would do would sit down and like learn off the data guys like what they're doing. So that was his first year ever like him being responsible for throttle maps and engine braking. It'd be like,
I don't think people realise I don't think people realise that like the difference. And you might think it could be as simple as putting like the wrong number in a cell in what like the equivalent of a spreadsheet, and that's the difference between when you close the throttle, it's staying open or closing. Like it's that.
And Alex would sit and go to me, Lewis, I don't know if this will quite work, so just watch it, because Alex had raced.
Alex, you do feel like that. You do.
Alex had raced 450s and he had raced 600s. He's never rode a big bike, so like he just looks at these big bikes as absolutely wild, and then he's like, I'm then in charge of his throttle and what he's using.
And then, Lewis, drink this. Why? It's holy water, son. It's
were you able to like work with him and like he's come up with this plan? And, like...
The best thing for me is having people who believe in me or want to go racing with me. Like I look at it as I'm taking my own personal money, I'm taking sponsorship money, like everyone's working to make it happen, so you're no wanting to be there just because a guy's making a wage or that's his job. You want to be there with people for the same reason as you, loving it. And, like you see that, you look at photos last year when I got that podium at Snetterton, every single person in the team was in tears because it means that much to them. Whereas you see other teams where like mechanics won't even go to the podium when the rider gets a podium because they're not. I've seen mechanics before. I'm like, oh, you're not going to the podium? I didn't get paid to walk to the podium. And I'm like, I'm not in a team for that reason. Like I want to enjoy it, and as well my mechanics. Like even though Alex was learning, he's there because he wants to be there and he wants to help me and he wants to see us do well. So like even if, and I said to him at the start of the year, I went, Alex, I'm going to make a lot more mistakes than you're going to make. I was like, so
that's good.
We're here to work together, and kind of, and the year we had was brilliant. So at the end of the year,
does your team have any direct support from Aprilia at all? Or?
We do get a bit.
Who's that from?
It's Michael Harrison's question.
That was a cracking question. That.
No, well, Ian, they support him like at the start of the year in Superstock, because a lot of the parts were road parts. They would like send them like a couple of engines, frames, things like that, and most teams buy a road bike and then strip them and build it into.
But he was able to do that.
But Ian just gets like the parts off Aprilia that he needs and then builds the Superstock bike. But now this year, because hardly anything on it is
the same,
a road bike part, we're having to get a lot of stuff made now, so Aprilia's still helping us. And Ian and that went over to the factory at the end of last year and was like looking through data from World Superbikes when they had done it.
That's good.
And then the Aprilia, the 1100s in the Italian Championship, and it actually runs on Motec as well.
Does it really?
But it's got traction control and everything through Motec, so you can still look at it and see and look at what they're doing suspension wise.
They don't have a swinging arm then for you to try or something like that.
I think they do have stuff that would fit the bike from when they had it at World Superbikes, but we just look at it as we weren't that far away last year, and we're hoping now, even just with a crew chief, hopefully maybe the difference he can make with, well, even just in Spain in January when we were out there, it was just a stalker, and what PJ was trying and like doing stuff, it made a huge difference. So
excellent.
I think if we can, Ian's old school, he's no like the new kind of Superbike era where chuck swing arms at it and this and that, and obviously as well budget, we're going from super stock where it's like 120 grand budget for a year to then pathway where it was say like 200 grand a year to then now having to say find like £500,000 to go Superbikes. And there was even talks about running 2 Superbikes this year, but it's same again, then you're doubling the budget again. And
and staff.
It's buying an Arctic lorry, paying a crew chief's wage, paying other mechanics' wages. People like, they've got a tyre boy, but the wheels and tyres are the most important job in the team.
Yeah.
Because if we don't have them, you're not going on track.
Are you making any of the personnel changes in the team this year, other than bringing a crew chief in?
Unless it's 2 tyre boys, you need one for the front and one for the back.
I was just thinking a T-boy, like I'd definitely get a job then.
You're busy, you.
I think Chris is a tea boy. He's the first person to make a cup of tea, coffee for everybody. But obviously team's expanding this year, so we've got Lee Johnston on the super sport bike and Freddie Barnes, Chrissy's son, on the super sport bike. They're both on Triumphs, and then Chrissy's other son Charlie Barnes on a Moto3 bike. So it's going to be a busy garage. Obviously same as again, we don't want to change too much on that side as well, because the mechanics are good on our side. They know the bike, they know how the team works, and then they'll need to learn, obviously with the team getting bigger. Then there's the super sport side. Lee's ran his own outfit for years, and then all of a sudden he's coming in a team with other bikes and different classes and a totally different environment. So it's kind of, and then there's Chris, who's obviously ran his 2 sons out of, well, he ran Freddie by himself in super sport, and then Charlie was in a Moto3 team. So it's like 4 different outfits all joining together. So it will be different for everybody. We've had to say like no girlfriends in the garage, and because it'd just be that busy. And obviously my mum and dad, they're used to coming just in the garage, but it will need to be a lot more professional outfit this year. And it's same again with the team progressing and moving forward. That's what we have to kind of aim for.
Because obviously, like Ian Newton went to the roads this year, and then Lee Johnson's not going back to the roads. It's bloody hell. Was that how? From your perspective, how's Lee doing? We're not doing the roads. Like,
Lee's fine. Obviously, he's had a few injuries, and that's kind of knocked him back a bit. He's still feeling it. He's getting older. He'll give me a slap for saying that. Nah, but Lee's loving life. He's good. He's out in Spain. He's enjoying it. He's riding well, like really well.
That's good to hear.
And I think it's actually maybe better in a way, because it's like gave him a target BSB. Like instead of being like, do the road, like the other year when he was really competitive in super sport, mind he was podiums. Did he do the double?
He was leading the championship.
Done the double at Snetterton and everything. So like really competitive, but then his main priority even back then was still the roads, whereas now it's like, okay, I'm getting the chance. The pressure's been taken off him because he's not running his own team anymore. Like he's coming into an outfit where everyone's trying to help him, and I think he's excited and wanting to actually give it a good go in super sport and the circuit sides. And he said as well he might go back to the roads, never knows, but just the deal he was getting this year was to prioritise on BSB and to help Chrissy's son Freddie improve, because he's just a young lad. He's 17-year-old, not raced like myself since he was a young lad. He started late. He's only been racing for like 3 years. Will be like his 4th season. So he's new to it all, and who better can you get to teach you than someone like Lee Johnston, who's got years of experience riding loads of different bikes.
100%. I tell you what, like this is actually one of my closing questions, but I've got one more. But you ever fancied having a go on the roads? Chris would be cursing us if I didn't ask that question. He always take the piss. He always asks the same question. But have you ever fancied having a go yourself?
Nah, I would love to. My first memories was...
Oh, the phone will be ringing now.
Nah, my dad went to the Isle of Man for, I think it was like 17 years in a row or something, till like foot and mouth. What year was it?
Jesus.
2001.
2001.
No,
so,
it wasn't, man.
Foot and mouth was
Jesus.
wasn't it?
So I was born in 99. So I was like 2-3-year-old. Well, I can mind, like, that's probably my first memories of life. Is my dad's got a KTM like 640 enduro bike, and I can mind me and him on that over at the Isle of Man, and then never went for years, but would watch it on the TV. Then when I was with Paget's, I went over and worked at the Northwest and at the Isle of Man.
Say, if you were going to do the roads, that was the time you were going to do it. Let's fit, like one phone call to Clive.
That was everyone's question, but Clive was the same. He's like, I've never asked someone to go down Bray Hill. They ask me to go down Bray Hill. He's like, I would never ask someone to do that. But as well, my goals, I'm 25. I still feel, well, I feel like I've not achieved what I wanted to achieve, but you look at it as Bridewell never won the title till he was 35-year-old. So I've still got like 10 years, and Bridewell was the same. I think he'd been in Superbikes for about 11 years until he finally won the title. So people look at me, like my mates who have known me since school, they're like, Lewis, when are you going to give up this racing? Like, you're still paying for it. It's no 11, you're still working. Like my mate the other month, I messaged him, I was like, speaking to me. He's like, well mate, I've not seen you for 3 months because you've been that busy. And I was like, fair enough, can't blame him for that. But you're that busy, just everything. But you just look, I think BSB, I've been given the opportunity, we're full Superbikes, do that. But as well, the road racing's that dangerous. My mum and dad, my mum can't watch me at BSB, so there's no way she could watch me at the roads. And then...
How did Dad feel about it?
I think if I turned round to my dad and said I want to do it, I don't think my dad would stop me. I think he'd still support you. But my mum, that's definite no-go. And then my Mrs. Lynn, she's like, no danger. Sponsors and that, no danger. Even though Ian done the roads, he's like, there's no way. He was fine with Mike Brown because Mike was doing the roads before going to him. But Ian's like, I would never force someone or like just
never encourage it.
Take them or encourage it. Like, especially him and Myra, they've obviously seen people who have lost their life, either roads, short circuit, and like I think they just, BSB's dangerous enough as it is, or any circuit racing, so no matter the road racing. But obviously that came about last year when Ian had talks with Aprilia about doing pathway at BSB, still running a super stock bike. And then Trevor Scotty had a huge relationship with him over the years, and Trevor was going road racing with Mike Brown, so it kind of everything tied together to make it happen. Whereas this year, even though Lee was coming into the team, it was on a Triumph, not on an Aprilia. And then that's on kind of the super sport side of the garage, not the Superbike side of the garage. So like, it wasn't like Lee turned up and was like, I want to do the roads and I want to race the Aprilia on the roads as well. It was it was kind of all different deals.
I was about to say, even with that to the side, obviously you've got all those commitments. Ian's got all them commitments in the garage there, and then he'll be back on the roads at the Northwest and TT.
No, so this...
All right, not this year.
Ian's not involved with it this year. Trevor Scott's...
He's got a lot on his plate if he took that on.
Trevor's still running a team this year.
Right.
But Mike Brown, he's moved ship, so he's on... I don't know who... Mike's got other stuff sorted out, but Trevor's got another couple of riders doing the roads and doing the wee road races and concentrating on that, but Trevor's kind of just running his own ship this year. But it's... Ian's involved in a lot, but he's that busy himself.
Yeah, I was about to say
the Superbike side of it.
Fantastic. But no, I tell you what, before I go right through the questions, because as we always say, we always naturally go through the conversation and we end up picking out the questions, but I think we've majority gone through them. But obviously, thank you so much to Michael Harrison, Andy Ryder, Jess Mortimer, Alex Chapman, Darren Warner, and my page won't turn over for the other one, so I do apologise to those other patrons. But Josh, have you got any more questions?
No, I think that's been I've really enjoyed that, actually.
Do you not want to have a go at him for slagging off your top?
It was free. Nothing wrong with it.
I love it. But no more. No, I tell you honestly,
we could sit here all afternoon.
Easily.
That's what it's like what you were saying earlier about being in Spain and missing racing, riding a bike. Like that's what me and Lynn sit down at night and you're watching podcasts and YouTube videos and you hear a lot of stories from everybody, and it's like everyone's got their own stories and you learn a lot about everybody. But that's what we love about it. It is a good thing to see what folk are up to, what they're doing in their off season, but then also the rest of their careers, and what you find out about folk and see Josh wearing funny jumpers.
But I tell you what, before we go and close this one down, we must talk about Clan 8. You know, how do people get involved with you for this journey? What's going on?
Well, the same, just my full career, I've always been, why would someone want to wear a loose Rollo t-shirt
that's a nice top,
a jumper? So
it's got tartan on it, it's a load of shit.
I love it.
So
it's freshly out the wrapper, that one. Is it? I'm going on Chasin the Racin, I better chuck that
If you
up.
sign up, it's 80 quid and you get a free kilt.
Free t-shirt, not even a kilt.
No, but all joking aside, how do people become part of the clan?
People have been chasing me for years, but just you're so busy sorting out the racing and everything like that. you're sorting out all the racing and that, and then trying to do merchandise and then trying to stock it or buy it. You know yourself, it is hard. So people have always been moaning at me, but this year Reading Graphics, Chris, you know him well, he obviously does stuff for you. He's done photos and that for us the last few years, but he's actually set me up like a wee website through Shopify. So I've got my own like wee Loose Rollo website. You can go on and there's like my Clan 8 package, so you enter that and then you pick your t-shirt and then that gets sent out to you. And then we've got other merchandise, so like just normal t-shirts, I think they're like 20 quid or something. Then jumpers, we're gonna have phone cases, mugs, bottles, hats, caps, like everything. So it's just same again it's brilliant to see people who have supported me over all the years since I was on 125, sponsors, followers, everything, family, friends. But then even like last year, when we got that podium at Snetterton, the amount of people I had never even met or seen before, and they're coming up and congratulating you. So this weekend, Scottish Bike Show, we're going to release a website, and then people can get on that. They can get
you'll have to hold on. This will be going out now. I'm looking at Lord Commander Grace, Sunday. This is going out Sunday. Right. So how are you going to have to drop the news now? Drop the website. How
I didn't even know.
Okay, right. Leave it like
Loose
that.
Loose Rollo Racing .com or .co.uk.
He's guessing his own. This is brilliant.
We'll have it on my Facebook, Instagram. We'll have it on there so people can get on, support me. Clan 8. It's £80. It obviously covers the cost of the t-shirt, but then the money goes to the racing. You get the chance to win 2 tickets to BSB, your choice, just the same as every other rider's doing
but
now.
Got to do it,
but
you know what I mean?
The money adds up. It was an idea my wee sister done years ago when everyone started. Murren's ran it for the last few years just through my racing page. But she's having a baby, she's too busy, and she's like, you've got people messaging you at like 12 o'clock at night, like, I've still not received my mug. And you're like, so this year's a bit easier on the website, everything's through that. And then we've got other merchandise, so same again, when we're at the rounds, we can spot you in the crowd and give you a wave and thank you for supporting us and making it happen.
Love it, mate, absolutely love it. But obviously, thank you so much for being on. Got any more?
Well, great. Yeah, but we'll be here till the rain stops.
I love it. Oh God, when Scotland's
it's sunny, it's 15 degrees outside.
But obviously, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been absolutely brilliant. Obviously, this show is brought to you by our amazing patrons. JCT Truck and Trailer Hire, Lucky Day Competitions, and of course the important OMG Racing. And to close the show, take us away, Lewis Rollo with Flower of Scotland.
Oh,
And thank you very We should have let that go. The amount of people go, let him ride it out. But obviously, mate, thank you so much. And we'll catch up with all you listeners later on. Awesome. Cheers.